Liberatore firing a two-hitter at Atlanta today. And he gets Duvall to cut and miss. Boy, that slider has been a devastating pitch. Libby with 5 strikeouts, and he's not through with the 5th inning yet. Swing and a miss. That ends Kelnick's perfect night. 7 strikeouts for Liberatore. 1 more strike gives him a new career mark. And he just got it. Breaking ball takes care of Ozzy-Albies. Liberatore strikes out the side in the 6th.
Our thought was keep him somewhere around 70 to 75. He wanted to go back out for another inning. He felt so good. So this is a resilient arm. Loves to throw, throws every day. He'll probably tell you he's available tomorrow.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, an impressive performance yesterday by Matthew Liberatore. T-Bone was all worried going into that one about, they're not going to get innings. They're so screwed. This is going to be a problem.
Man, it's like there's 2 T-Bones in the room with me. It's wild.
Matthew Liberatore goes out there and absolutely shoves just the way that Alex, you and I told Tanner yesterday he would.
Always believed.
6 innings, 85 pitches, 8 strikeouts, a new career high, just 1 walk, a slider that, dude, I don't know where this came from, but it's one of the best pitches in Major League Baseball. Not opinion, ranked by StatCast right now as one of the best, most effective pitches in the sport. I certainly didn't see that coming for a left-hander that is more a reliever than a starter at this point, that has had some issues with keeping his velocity late into games. Didn't see that yesterday. He was throwing like 97 in the 6th inning to get out of that one. And a guy that was on the attack from the first pitch of the game against a very right-handed heavy lineup. That was as impressed as I have been since the Tampa Bay start by Matthew Liberatore. I think this would probably be the 2nd most impressed I've been with him in any individual outing. Alex, what'd you see from him? Where did this come from?
I have no idea. The velocity is the part that I was most impressed by, because typically you see it in the early portion and then it wanes quickly, and that's why you don't typically have more than 4 innings from Matthew Liberatore. But it wasn't just the velocity. I mean, the pitches were going everywhere. I mean, you saw him locate high. You saw him locate low. You were getting swings outside of the zone. He was very meticulous at how he picked apart the hitters. And it was really, I mean, it looked like I was watching a starting pitcher. And every time I see Matthew Liberatore take the mound when he's not in a bullpen role, I'm thinking, uh-oh, this one's going to go haywire. Even the last time we saw it versus Miami. Now, I give him some grace because that first inning, he found out he was pitching 15 minutes before he stepped onto the field. Sure. But you start off poorly where you give up back-to-back home runs. You don't get anybody the first 3 batters out. And then he settles down enough to where he can get them 3 2/3 innings and only allow those 2 runs at home runs. So I don't know what he's untapped. Obviously, it's something. Confidence is another big part of this, but that was the most impressive. That was more impressive than the Tampa Bay game for me, because Matthew Liberatore has gone through the ringer this season. Like at that time, it was he's in the minors, he's getting back going, and then you get him up there. This one, you've been a bullpen, you've been a late inning guy, you've been an early inning guy, you've been an opener, now you've been a starter. That was the most impressive start for me.
And for me, I don't know if you guys feel this way, it just looks like he trusts everything he throws now. You know, I felt like in the past it was like if he wasn't throwing a curveball, he had no hope. You know, he knew his fastball was going to get crushed, didn't really want to use it, couldn't maintain the velo on it. And last night, maintains the velo, was able to rear up and get to 96 when he needed it late in that outing, especially for a guy that was supposed to go 60 pitches and ended up at like 85. He trusts the slider. The breaking ball looks good. Like it looked like what you'd expect from a major league starter. It was really impressive what Matthew Liberatore was able to give them, because when Gibson went 4 1/3, whatever it was yesterday, yeah, I was sounding the red alarm bells going, oh my God, this is really not going to work. They shouldn't have gone with a bullpen game. But credit to Matthew Liberatore. He looked awesome. And I think righties were 0 for 12 in that game against him, which is unbelievable since they all look like Babe Ruth against him typically.
You know what really impresses me about it is think about like your identity as a pitcher. For Matthew Liberatore coming up, it was the curveball. Like every time you heard about Matthew Liberatore coming through the system, it was, well, he's got this curveball. He's got this curveball. Wait till you see the curveball. Matthew Liberatore has thrown his curveball 50 times this year, total, on the entirety of the season. For context, he's thrown his slider 190 times so far this year. He has essentially ditched one breaking ball for another and said, this is what it's going to work. This is what it's going to work for me. There are a couple of young guys on this team, and it takes some time to get here, that have said, okay, I'm going to allow the Cardinals organization to coach me now. And I think Matthew Liberatore is one of those. I think Alec Burleson is another. And I think you have to meet a player where he is sometimes, Alex. And that can take a whole lot of time. And sometimes it takes so long that they are not a part of your organization by the time somebody gets into their head. This is not working for you. You have to be willing to be coached in order for us to extract the best from you whatever your talents are.
You have to hit rock bottom as an athlete.
And I think Matthew Liberatore did. I think last year was hard for him, where he's like, you know what, I'm a reliever now? Like he said yesterday after the game, I've always viewed myself as a starter. And now he has a pitch with that slider that can allow him to be a starter. I don't know if that's where he's going to be long-term this year. We'll talk a little bit about this later on today. I personally would just put him back into the bullpen. I know that's cold. I know that's a hard reality. He earned, honestly, another opportunity to start, but I need him out of my bullpen right now. And that slider, that fastball, that is a weapon for them out of the bullpen. They need a lefty out there. But for him to be willing to make this kind of a significant change in his arsenal where he says, okay, I've always been fastball, curveball. I'm now going to become a slider primarily type of a pitcher. That's a huge change. It is a big leap of faith for him. He put his career into the Cardinals organization, their hands. It's a big thing, man. And he deserves a lot of credit for that, for being willing to accept the coaching that the Cardinals were very clearly trying to give him. Burleson's another guy that last year tried to hit everything. Every pitch, tried to get it. This year, he's hitting the pitches that he can do damage on. Did it a couple of times yesterday. Those two dudes ultimately won them the game yesterday. You're seeing now what happens when a player allows him to be coached.
Yeah, and it's not every single player. We always talk about how all players are not the same when it comes to development, but there are some players that throughout their younger age were the best at everything they did. And so when you get to the next level, it's thinking, oh, I'm already great. You don't really need a whole lot that goes into this. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And it's a quick reality of like, oh, nope, this isn't what I thought it was. And at some point, I feel like every athlete has to hit rock bottom to where it's, all right, I have to change the way I approach games. Otherwise, this is what reality is. You mentioned it, Nolan Gorman. I feel like a couple of years ago, Nolan Gorman had that reality. Not so much rock bottom, but he went through the longest streak where people were thinking, this guy's not even an everyday player.
I wonder if Jordan Walker's there right now.
That's what I was just going to say that. Burleson, I think, has gone through it. I would say Wynn hasn't gone through it because, I mean, you've just been
last year, I think. I think Wynn was always pretty coachable,
at the end of the season?
Wynn last year at the end of the season was like, okay, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing right now, this is not working.
And
how do I get to my place where I can have the same damage against Major League pitching that I had against AAA?
Wynn just never felt like the type of guy that was like, I'm too good for your coaching. It was just a matter of I got to figure it out. I do believe Jordan Walker is through that right now. And I think that's a good sign, at least for Cardinals fans, when you're seeing the development of these guys. Once you hit rock bottom in terms of I can't be this anymore, that's when you become a lot more open and willing. And I know somebody's probably texting in right now about Dylan Carlson and why hasn't it worked. Some guys go through injury problems. Some guys hit rock bottom, willing to listen, but then injuries take a toll. So I just think that's what we saw with Liberatore, and that's huge for this Cardinals team.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with what happened with Liberatore of going through that with the guys, and I wonder if you're going to get to a point with that with some of their other pitching prospects like a Zach Thompson, for example. Does Zach Thompson kind of adjust to this? What about Michael McGreevy, who's having troubles in AAA? You know, that is going to be the thing for those guys that, and most talked about it, the AAA pitching staff has stalled. Like McGreevy, Graceffo, Kloffenstein, which he looked good in his one outing for the Cardinals. Michael McGreevy, all those guys who they thought were going to be major league potential pitchers this year, have stalled at AAA. Are they having the same problem? Or is it, and that's the tough part too between the Cardinals is separating what is, okay, working with them and trying to get them there, or just the talent isn't there and they're not going to be able to get here.
That's the important factor here. Liberatore not only had the willingness to be coached, he had a pitch that works.
Yeah.
This slider is a real pitch for him, man. This works against anybody. And if it continues to be this kind of effective, eventually he's going to be a starter. Because you can be a starter with two pitches that are effective, that are when you got one that's this good. And the slider right now is his primary pitch. When you see what he did yesterday, he had 10 whiffs on 17 swings. That's a ridiculous rate, an absolutely absurd rate. And maybe that was a one-off. Maybe it's not going to be as effective moving forward. But even out of the bullpen, that's been his best pitch so far this season. Opposing hitters on the season are batting 110 against Matthew Liberatore's slider. They have a 43% swing and miss rate against it. It doesn't matter if it's a lefty, if it's a righty. It's been a weapon against both sides of the plate. That is a pitch that can unlock his full potential. Would you guys go back to him? Would you
In
guys
the
give him
bullpen, I would.
Would you guys give him another start?
I wouldn't.
Prior to the All-Star break.
I
So you
wouldn't.
got one more opportunity if you wanted to.
I wouldn't. I know that's cold-hearted because the guy just did so well, but I need you in my bullpen this season. I need you as a lefty late in games, so I'm not overusing other players. And you looked great. Keep that up because next year you're in our rotation, or you got a chance to be in our rotation. But for right now, we need you in our bullpen, and that's how we're going to win baseball games.
Given how scared they are about their rotation and how much they clearly want to get extra rest for guys, would you consider going 6-man?
No.
No, I wouldn't. I think you're asking for more problems when you do something different than what you've done all season.
And as good as Libby was last night, and I'm giving him his flowers, and I'm giving him his credit because that was a hell of a performance, I don't know how repeatable it is. You know, I still don't know how good he's actually going to be against right-handers. Maybe it finally has clicked. I mean, Ollie has talked about it. You know, he's looked better against right-handers of late. But I would much rather just say, you know what, it's already tough with the fifth spot being a giant question mark with what I'm going to get from Palante. I don't need two major question marks in the rotation. And if I'm being honest with you, I've lost some faith in JoJo Romero. His numbers have not been good. His usage has been weird in the last month. I think Matthew Liberatore could become your top left-handed arm right now out of the bullpen and take that spot from JoJo.
You gave him another shot last year, and I know it's a different season, but you gave him a shot last year after Tampa, and it didn't go as well as the Tampa one did. Leave something that's good right there and work on it, build on it. Don't break the guy after you've been so successful. Like, if you want a dude that's confident in your bullpen, that's Matthew Liberatore after a start like that.
What I like is that you now know you can ramp him up quickly. That is something else that we got out of yesterday. I like the mentality that he had, man. Saying, hey, I got one more inning in me, Ollie. I thought for sure he was done after the fifth. Because that was apparently where they wanted him to get to. 70 pitches. He was right there. He says, no, I got one more in me, Skip. I got one more in me. And Ollie said, and credit to Ollie for this as well, all right, let's see what you got. And they had the lead that was enough to where they could say, okay, let's put him out there. If he gets into any trouble, we can go to our back into the bullpen. Guys, he got him through. He got him through the inning that they needed to get out of him. They squeezed one more, especially after that start by Kyle Gibson. I think that probably played into their decision there is, okay, we thought Gibson was going to give us another inning, so maybe we can squeeze out one more here that effectively serves as what we thought we were going to get out of our two starters today. Credit to both sides, Liberatore and Ollie, for being able to do that. You now know you can push him whenever you need another starter. If you need another starter, I would not give him another one. I'm on the same page as the two of you. I know many in our audience, and I know earlier today, Greg Gamsinger was on the other side. I would say, Libby, thank you so much. Great start by you. This opens our mind to what you can still be in the future here in St. Louis. However, what we need from you right now is to be a lockdown, back into the bullpen type of a guy. And if we can get you through multiples, great. But for the most part, we're going to use you in the seventh inning when we got a left, right, left coming up. That's going to be a really big deal, especially coming up in this series against Cincinnati, where they've got some big-time left-handed bats in that order. Sorry, Libby, but that's where we need you right now. And I think Liberatore is going to be open to that. I think he'll be fine with it. And you just move on. And if you need a pitcher later on this year to start again, he can be a guy that you go to. Now you have confidence that he can be one of those pitchers for you. But for right now, I would not go back to him in the next start. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/101ESPN-STL. That is where the Graveyard Chat is off and running today. Coming up in the 12 o'clock hour, we're going to talk some hockey with Craig Button, one of the best analysts in the business. He breaks down all of the draft stuff, so we'll get into that with him. And couple of defensemen now being talked about, one in the buyout market, another in the trade market. Would Craig Button consider either of these two possibilities for the Blues? We'll talk to him about that coming up at 12 o'clock. But coming up next, the Cardinals have finally shown an ability to beat good teams. They have shown an ability to hit against good pitching. Those are the two things that Alex Ferrario wanted to see from them. Is he ready to buy in?
Good luck.
We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Lynn takes off. That ball's hammered into the right field corner, down for a hit. 1 run scores. Mason streaking to third. He's going to score. Burleson doubles home two. It's 2-0 Cardinals. He does it again. This time fair. Carlson can crawl home. Goldschmidt with a base hit provides some huge insurance in the Cardinals' ace. He's ready with his 1-2 now. He got him. That's your ball game. The Cardinals take the series against Atlanta. Helsley saves the ball game for Matthew Liberatore. What a way to take care of the Braves in Game 2 of the doubleheader.
The St. Louis Cardinals just took 2 out of 3 against the Atlanta Braves. They have already swept the Orioles. They won 2 out of 3 against the Red Sox. They have the best record in the National League since Mother's Day. And with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. They're playing good baseball. They're putting the pressure on the opposition. We're seeing them taking extra bases. We're seeing them stealing at a rate unlike what we had seen from them really in the first 2 months of the season. The pitching has been really good for the majority of the season. They're starting to get some more clutch hitting. It's not great, but it's getting a little bit better. You saw that yesterday with some of the 2-out RBIs that they had in that one to be able to extend their lead. All of this is what we wanted to see from the Cardinals before you buy back in. They did so little to earn your trust in the first 39 games of the season, in which they were 15-24, that it was going to always take a while for fans to be ready to jump back on board to say, okay, I'm ready to be heard again, especially coming off of a historically bad season. They earned your displeasure. They earned your lack of trust. And yet, here we are, Alex, in late June. They are in sole possession of the second wild card in the National League. They just took 2 out of 3 against the team that has sole possession of the top wild card in the National League. They're hitting good pitching now. Alex, I'm going to ask you the question that I know a lot of Cardinals fans have been wondering. Are you ready to jump on the bandwagon and to put on the conductor hat and to ride the choo-choo Cardinals bandwagon? Are you ready to be a part of this train?
Well, that's not a good way to sway me on board with this one.
I'm presenting it. I'm giving you the opportunity. I feel like, having talked with you both on and off air, we've been getting closer and closer to this moment. I wasn't willing to give you this opportunity a few days ago. I ruined your bit. I apologize for that.
It was a big bit, but it's fine. Not a big deal.
Alex.
Yeah, Brandon.
I present to you the conductor hat. Are you ready to have the honor, the privilege of wearing this hat as the dual conductors of this Cardinals train?
Look, man, this is like the ultimate BKO. Him handing you something when a team is going well, like it is the ultimate. So let me work through my mind for a little bit while you hold on to that.
Just saying.
Because
it's like the Stanley Cup was here. I should have worn gloves.
You should go jump into the fountain like Matthew Tkachuk did with the beach with it. I pushed back with this as much as possible. Like I have lived off of, for a little bit there, I lived off of what they did last year, and it felt like it was hard to get rid of. And we saw that with the White Sox. You saw that with the opening of the season. You even saw it where you almost lost a series to the Angels, but you didn't. And that was the start of it. The Red Sox, the Orioles, the Cubs, I thought all of those were hot streaks. I thought all of those were this Cardinals team that was, hey, we found a way to get the best out of our team, but it's going to fall away. And I thought the Phillies and Astros did it. But after you did it against the Pirates, after you did it against the Cubs, the Marlins, I'm going to put that one to the side. That was just a weird game. And then you did it with the Giants in a sweep, mind you. And then you just did it with the Braves yesterday. Guys, I'm ready to be heard again. Give me that damn hat. Give me that damn hat. Give me that damn hat.
He's back on
T-Bone,
board, baby.
how do they say it? Choo-choo! God, mine was much better than this. I'm not even going to open up the text line, and I'm not even going to open up the YouTube chat because everybody on here does not want me on this bandwagon.
I should get you a girl dad hat for the conductor.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. It's going to say conductor, and I'll wear it all the time. Here's why I'm ready to get back on board. I can't deny what they've done. Now, I will say I don't believe that this team still has the capability of doing anything in the playoffs. That has not changed
when you
my
say
mind.
anything, like, you don't think they could go into the playoffs and like if they get the top wild card spot, they would go up against the Brewers.
I don't think
you don't think they could beat the Brewers in a 5-game series.
No, I don't think they could get to the DS.
3-game series.
I don't think they could get to the DS.
Really?
I don't. Unless they do some type of massive move at the
Then
deadline.
you're not actually on the big.
No, I am. Here's the thing, though. I'm not going to sit here and look at it with a pessimistic mindset anymore.
I like it.
Because the team is really good. You have just wiped the floor against basically every single team that is around you or below you in the wild card. You are better than the Braves. You are better than the Pirates. You're better than the Reds. You're better than all of these wild card teams that are posing as playoff teams. You actually look like a playoff team. None of these other teams do. Do I think you're better than Milwaukee, LA, Philly? Absolutely not. But I'm not going to look at this with a pessimistic mindset anymore. I'll put the red shaded glasses on. I think this team should be aggressive at the trade deadline because you've got a team right now. And really what made me put this conductor hat on, and I mean, I'm so much on board, I'm going to the game tonight.
Whoa.
Like to cover, go in the locker room.
It's been like a year and a half since Alex has done that.
Burleson.
You should wear that into the locker room.
Some of that is also just toddler stage, but regardless.
I can't wait for you to wear that in your interview with Ollie.
Yeah,
It's gonna be great.
Well, I can't wait for Ollie to get mad at me because he listens and he hears how angry I am all the time.
I just picture you walking in going, Ollie,
Look, hey, choo-choo, MFer, right? Burleson, Donovan, and Wynn, those 3 guys got me on board. And it's wild that those 3 guys that I all thought were going to be complementary pieces are the reason that I'm willing to engage and believe that this team actually can do some damage. But now, if I'm on board, now I'm going to be critical of their moves because you need to be aggressive. You got to be aggressive, man. You can't just go out there and bring in some mid-tier starter or get no help. You have to invest in this team so that they can actually do some damage later on in the season.
So I'm with you there. I do think that maybe we need to be realistic about what's available.
No.
Like, not what the Cardinals can do, what's literally out there for any team.
Do you want me on board or not, damn it?
I'm with you. I don't think Garrett Crochet is a reasonable ask from this price.
No.
You're giving up too much in the form. I know, it's really hard,
This
right?
hat
It's
is
tough.
very difficult.
Garrett Crochet would mean you're giving up too much from your current Major League roster, that you're no longer a contender. So you're contending for like 25, 26, 27, and maybe that's worth it to a lot of people. But I don't think that's something I can ask of them. I went over to The Athletic. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on today. But The Athletic put out their new trade board. It has like 91 players on it. The number 2 starter on that board is Yusei Kikuchi, who I think most people, including Alex Ferrario, would say, well, that's not good enough.
Go get him and I'll put the hat on.
If he's the second best pitcher that people believe is going to be available at the deadline, and he's probably the best guy the Cardinals could get, not named Garrett Crochet, well, then maybe that's a pretty good addition for them at the deadline. But that speaks to, it's just a lack of sellers. And the Cardinals are putting themselves in position now to be one of the clear-cut buyers. That's where they're at. I believe in this team to be able to do something. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means getting to the NLCS. I don't know if that means just getting to the playoffs and then weird stuff happens in a 3-game series and they melt down again. I have no idea, but I want to see it. I'm here for the ride. I'm excited for what that journey is going to look like between late June and early October. And man, I say this all the time. I know Cardinals fans, many disagree with me. I think there is value in having a playoff race. I think there is value in getting into the postseason. I'm not telling you that should be the number 1 aspiration. You should aspire to be more than just a playoff contender, a team that gets into the playoffs. But at a certain point in time, given what's happened to them this year with some of the injuries, some of the lack of performances, with that context, I think getting into the playoffs this year is pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. And hopefully they're able to do something once they do get in. So I'm excited to see what the next 3 months look like. And I couldn't say that as recently as 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. I am too. I think they give you an opportunity to believe when you see Donovan, Wynn, and Burleson coming up. Like that 2-strike hit that knocked in the first run last night by Mason Wynn, that's not a fluke. That's a guy who knows when and the right time to swing the bat on the right pitch in the right scenario. Burleson's coming up and winning these games left and right, and you've got guys that are still underperforming to expectations, and the pitching has got to the point where I can't deny it anymore. Do I think Lynn's going to be there all season for you? No, I'm a little worried about it. Steven Matt's obviously injured, but even with Kyle Gibson in a bad start yesterday, still found a way to keep it close for the Cardinals, and you've got Gray and Michaelis fixing it. So this isn't a trend or a hot streak anymore. This feels like a Cardinals team that is much different.
A good team.
Yeah.
Not a great one.
They do.
But a pretty good one.
I feel like an 85 to 88.
They're a top wild card team, which
and
I
if
didn't
a couple
believe.
of things go right, you get to 90.
Yeah.
Like that's where they're at right now is like true talent. They're probably an 87 win team in most seasons. In this season where the National League isn't very good for the most part, maybe get to 90. And if you make the right addition and they come in, they unlock a couple of things, maybe that's how you end up getting there. But Alex is right. I remember T-Bone asked what was a really important question a few weeks ago where he said, can this team win without Goldie and Arenado becoming Goldie and Arenado? Like what we've known them to be. And at the time, I think most people's answer was no. You can't do anything meaningful. You can't consistently keep winning without those guys becoming stars again. And I think my answer to that has changed. I do think they can consistently win without those guys being stars. Can they win a World Series? No, I don't think so. I think they need at least one of them to become a star again to be able to get there. And maybe that's just for a month in October. Like weird stuff happens in October, stars are born. I've seen Lucas Duda become that. I've seen Daniel Murphy become that. We've seen Jock Peterson become that. Eddie Rosario's become that. Like Tommy Pham became a star for like a month. Randy Arozarena has been a really good major leaguer. He had a month where he was Babe Ruth. Like weird stuff happens in October, and maybe Arenado or Goldie are able to find it for a month. But between now and then, can this team win? Yeah, I think they can. I think they're good enough, they're deep enough, they have the kind of roster that they can get to 85 to 90 wins, and that's what it seems like it's going to take this year to get into the playoffs without Goldie and Arenado becoming stars again.
Yeah,
T-Bone?
No, I won't put the head on.
Oh.
I still feel some skepticism of if this is sustainable. You know who they feel like, and it's weird that I'm saying this, and it's why exactly they feel like the
too,
Blues.
man.
And I'm not saying like the Blues from last year. What I'm saying is what the Blues were when they were good, which is there is no like star. It is just a whole bunch of pieces that are really playing well, and they somehow win. And I don't know if that is even sustainable in the NHL today. That's why I've argued the Blues should go find a star and get rid of the pack mentality. That's what we're kind of seeing from the Cardinals right now offensively, is kind of that pack mentality.
Totally fair.
What I just don't know is, does that sustain? Can you win that way? I think you can in the regular season, but what about when you get to October? Like the few teams that do this that I'm thinking of that were like, okay, pack mentality, weren't really necessarily great offensively. Like I think of that Royals team. They had unbelievable pitching, and like the Cardinals pitching's been good. I think this bullpen's elite. The rotation's not elite. The rotation's not going to get elite because I don't think they can get a true number 2 starter. All the guys that are available at the deadline are the typical Mo shopping spree, which is the second tier guys, but they happen to be in the first tier this offseason or this trade deadline. So I still find myself feeling somewhat skepticism. I won't deny that they're playing good baseball. Like I'm not going to sit here and be pessimistic and say they're not a playoff team anymore. They're a playoff team. What I just can't figure out is, okay, what is the ceiling for this team? Where are they as a win-loss team? Can they get back in the division race? Are they going to have to fight for their life once we get to September and try to hold on to a wild card spot? I just don't know. That's why I'm not putting on the conductor hat today.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You could always check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Do want to hear from you guys, by the way. Are you ready to buy on board? Alex is currently wearing a conductor hat. Choo-choo. As recently as a week ago, I thought there was no chance of that. So many of you are probably in the same position that Alex has been in, which is, I'm not ready to buy in. I'm not ready to buy in. Okay, they took two out of three. I'm ready to buy in now. Where are you on the St. Louis Cardinals? The mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. If you want to get your thoughts known, get them in over there right now. 101 ESPN app, that is where the mic drop feature is. We'll hear from you throughout the day today. But coming up next, we got to talk about the Blues because they hired a new assistant coach today. It's a Stanley Cup champion head coach.
Craig Berube?
What does this mean for the Blues, their direction, what kind of hockey they would like to play under Drew Bannister? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Braves yesterday 4-1 in the second game of their doubleheader as they take 2 of 3 from Atlanta. Tonight they start a 4-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. Andrew Abbott will get the start for Cincinnati. Miles Mikolas will be on the mound for St. Louis. 6:45 will be first pitch tonight. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. The Blues made some news earlier today announcing that they are going to promote Steve Ott to associate coach, which is essentially the top assistant coach, and they're hiring a new assistant coach. Alex, sometimes when these hires are announced, I'm going to be totally candid. I've never heard of the man that's been hired. That's the majority of the time when it comes to
Come on, man, you're a hockey guy.
Blues assistant coaches.
That
Like,
happened
hey,
again
Alex,
today?
who'd they hire?
Like when they hired Mike Weber, BK was like, "Who's this?"
Pretty much, yes. Now, the other one,
Did you know Mike Van Ryn when they hired him?
I was familiar.
Yeah.
But the other guy that they hired last year, I was like, I know that last name. Familiar with that one.
He was a skills coach. I think those are different.
So this one, I was like, hey, I know this guy. They hired Claude Julien to be their assistant coach for this upcoming season. Now, you may be familiar with his name because he won a Stanley Cup. He was the head coach of the Boston Bruins in 2011 when they won the Cup. He was the head coach of them when they went to the Cup again in 2013. This is a very accomplished head coach, Alex. Now, he is getting up there in age, but I wouldn't say he's like old. He's 64 years old. He apparently wants to get back into coaching. He put his name in the ring. He put his hat in the ring for the Ottawa head coaching job when Travis Green got that opportunity.
He was in the finalists, too, for it.
He was hoping to get another head coaching job, but now he's going to be an assistant here in St. Louis. This is a big-time hire, man. This is not some random dude that's trying to make his way through the coaching ranks. This is a guy that comes with a lot of pedigree. What does it say about what they're trying to accomplish, the kind of hockey that Drew Bannister wants to play, that they hired Claude Julien to be an assistant coach for them?
I mean, to me, the first thing I thought of when they signed him or when it was announced was, oh, okay, so this is a power play guy. Because go back and think of Doug Armstrong's press conference, and I think the most recent one, he talked about how Drew Bannister was still kind of sorting through some things of what he wanted on his staff, and if it made sense, then Doug said it would happen. And the one thing that it felt like they were still trying to figure out is nobody on that coaching staff was a power play specialist. Steve Ott did the penalty kill, Mike Weber was defense, and then you've got Drew Bannister. So I was thinking, all right, you're going to find somebody who can work the power play a little bit. So that was the first thing that came to mind. And I mean, Claude Julien, in the 10-plus years he was in Boston, overall that team had the 8th best power play in that time frame in the National Hockey League. So it's not like he's a schlub when it comes to a power play. Is he one of the brightest minds with it? Absolutely not. But it's somebody who has a different view. I also think, and this goes to what Kerbs told us yesterday about, the Blues seem to be in a time frame of a group and an organization that they were when they brought in Jason Arnott and Jamie Langenbrunner, a lot of those veterans that were on the back end of their careers, but you brought them in for the mindset, the wiseness, and the ability to lead. And that's where I really felt like they hired Claude Julien. Drew Bannister has last season as his experience at the National Hockey League. Steve Ott's never been a head coach. Mike Weber's never been a head coach. Both have only been in the league since 2019 as assistant coaches. You got to have some experience on the bench. They did this when Craig Berube had taken over and Larry Robinson was a part of that group. I think this was a lot of, we're going to bring in somebody who can be a sounding board for Drew Bannister and can provide another set of eyes to this team and figure out where we need to go with it. And if you look at Claude Julien's numbers when he was with Boston in that time frame, and again, hockey's changed. It's been a long time.
Also, we had a really good team.
Yeah. At the beginning, and then it faded, and then he got the team that was really good again. But Montreal was not a good team, and he took the Montreal Canadiens to the playoffs twice. So, I mean, and Marty St. Louis is still yet to do that with the Montreal Canadiens. But when you look at the time that he was with Boston, you were top 5 in goals scored per game. You were top 5 in goals allowed per game, top 10 in power play, top 10 in penalty kill. And the part that got me, shots per game, top 4. So this is a mindset that's going to try and provide a little bit more offense to their team.
So I texted my buddy, who is a Bruins fan, earlier today to find out the Bruins' perspective on Claude Julien. Now, a reminder.
I could tell you that didn't go well.
This is a team that at the end of his tenure, they needed to move on from Claude Julien. So keep that in mind. That's the lasting memory of what he was at the end, right? That's typically how you remember a guy. So he said, big pack-it-in guy. Bruins played very slow under him, and they did so for too long. He refuses to evolve. Power play was awful. He was a great coach for the 2000s. Not good, though, for the brand of hockey that's been in vogue since about 2013. Really cool dude. Don't hate him being on his staff. Will definitely improve you defensively.
Yeah, but he's not a coach. So, like, you hear that? He's not the head coach. He's an assistant coach.
I thought the last line is what mattered the most to me.
Yep.
If this guy does nothing else, but he comes in and helps you defensively, he's done his job, dude. He's more than done his job. That's all I want. I want somebody that can come in, work with your defensemen, especially the young guys, and get the best versions of them. And if you can do that, it's kind of like for the Cardinals. If the Cardinals, I think Dusty Blake has done this. I think they're doing a really good job of extracting the most out of young pitchers right now. Like the most that they can possibly get out of them. Look at what Chris Roycroft is doing for them. They're getting guys and they're finding them and saying, this is what you do well, this is what you don't. Let's focus on the good. Let's not worry about the bad. Let's make sure that you're getting the most out of that. For the Blues defensemen, what do you do well? What can we get out of you that works? How do we get the most out of that aspect of your game? Scott Perunovich, you're a really good power play guy. How do we maximize what you do on the power play and minimize your deficiencies defensively at 5-on-5? Maybe there's no way to do it. But if there's anybody that can do it, it's probably Claude Julien. It's probably Drew Bannister. And so that's my hope, is between those two gentlemen, they can get the most possible out of what you have right now on your blue line. Hopefully that includes a new addition this offseason. That, for me, is what's most important about this hire.
Well, let's also address the elephant in the room with it. Guess who Claude Julien had on his blue line for 5 years in Boston?
Justin Falk played with Boston?
Nope. Nice try.
I'm going to go with one Torrey Krug.
That is correct.
That's interesting,
and Torrey
actually.
Krug, in 3 of those 4 years that he was with them, plus 18 with 40 points, plus 13 with 39 points, plus 9 with 44 points. 14 goals, 12 goals. I'm going to tinfoil it here for everybody.
We just hired him to fix Krug?
It's a possibility.
If he does, he's worth every penny that you paid him.
Absolutely.
If you get the most out of Torrey Krug this year because you have somebody that knows how to utilize him better,
Like typically when you bring in,
or if you get the most out of Scott Perunovich in the role that Torrey Krug was in Boston early in his career, again, worth every penny.
like typically when you bring in different voices for a team, you're bringing in voices that can fix deficiencies. And where were they deficient last year? Power play specifically. I mean, Torrey Krug was on the second unit by the end of the season. Scott Perunovich was nothing for you on the power play. That's somebody who can do that. You're bringing in somebody who can work with the defenseman. And again, I think it's very important to have somebody who has been a coach for a long time in the NHL. When you have a head coach who is going to hit different situations at the NHL level and say, how do we handle this? And that's where Claude Julien comes into play.
Somebody on the text line also said he helps develop Patrice Bergeron as well, so keep that in mind.
Robert Thomas.
There you go. I mean, it's a good guy to have inside of the room.
Absolutely.
And it's something that I give the Blues a lot of credit for, Alex. We were talking about this before the show today. It's something that ownership deserves a lot of credit for. They didn't have to go out there and pay whatever it costs to bring in a guy like Claude Julien.
And it can't be that cheap. Yeah.
He's not coming in for the same price as, some random dude that's 32 years old, just got out of the league and wants to get his foot into the door of the coaching ranks. That's a different price that you're buying at. The Blues are going to the top of the shelf here to bring in this kind of an assistant coach. Now, they are also paying less for Drew Bannister than they would for, the top of the market coaching that's out there right now. But it's important that they are bringing in a bunch of these dudes. They're paying Alex Steen to be their general manager while also keeping Doug Armstrong in place right now to be their president of hockey operations. Army has a lot of dudes around him that are former players that aren't just doing this for no money whatsoever, that he can go to at any given time and say, hey, what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? The Blues have done a pretty good job of surrounding Doug Armstrong with the right people, surrounding their coaches with the right people. What their coaches need, they go get them. There's another team in town that could learn from that. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Questions and answers coming up next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. In about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk to Craig Button, one of the best NHL analysts in the business for My Money Alex. He's going to talk to us about what the Blues could do in this year's NHL draft and a couple of defensemen that might become available. One via buyout, another via trade. Would Button have interest in either? We'll talk to him about that coming up at 12:15. But right now, this one comes from the 314. Does a slugging Burleson make Jordan Walker a trade option for the Cardinals, or does a revamped Walker make Burleson a trade option? I'll take option C. Both of those things can be good for the Cardinals. I think Alec Burleson is your 2025 first baseman.
I thought option C was Lars Nootbaar becomes a trade option.
I don't think any of them. I think that sometimes we get so locked into, well, everybody has to have a locked-in everyday position. And I think for the most part, everybody will. But I think Brendan Donovan is the type of player that can be your Ben Zobrist. And going into 2025, and we know, by the way, most of the time, your whole team isn't healthy. But if they are in this beautiful environment, the Cardinals go into 2025, everybody's healthy the entirety of the season. You can use Brendan Donovan as playing all around. Alec Burleson's your first baseman. Hopefully Jordan Walker's your everyday right fielder. And now you've got Lars Nootbaar in left field. That's how I would like to see it. But I don't think you have to trade either of them. I think you just hope that both of them are really good long term.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade any of them right now. Obviously, if Goldie and Arenado are going down and you lose Goldie, you're going to need the most offense you can have. So Walker's a good piece to have, and also Gorman goes into his dry spell, so you're going to need a lot to make up for certain guys that aren't there, and I take consistency every day of the week in my lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I wouldn't trade any of them. And one thing I'll be curious to see what the Cardinals do next year, if Burley is the first baseman, is will they make Nootbaar more of a DH type? Try and keep him healthier. You know, the Twins did that with Byron Buxton, and that's why I brought that up. Was I wonder if they would? I'm not saying he becomes just a DH, but you know, is he the guy that takes like 50% of those DH at bats, and Donnie's more of the primary left fielder?
He plays one of three in the outfield, and the other two is your DH.
Might be the best way to keep him healthy. You know, can't run into a wall if you're not out in the outfield.
Hey man, you can't hurt a rib diving for a ball if you're not diving.
Maybe he plays 2 out of every 3 games. 2 games he's in left field. The next game he's at DH, and maybe in that game he's the guy that you have Brendan Donovan playing for in the outfield. And then another game he's playing at second base, and another game he's playing at third, another game he's playing first. Like you could make this thing work pretty easily. That is an interesting idea.
One game.
From the 636 guys, will Ollie Marmol get any credit for this team if they are 10 games above 500 by the All-Star break, or will people still hate him no matter what?
People are going to hate him no matter what because he's tied to Mo. As long as John Mozeliak is there, and I don't think anybody is going to lose their frustration with him, I think Ollie's going to be tied to that because he was a Mo hire.
I think he's got to win in October to start to lose some of that of what you're talking about being whether it be tied to Mo or just the fact of people don't like some of his decision making. He's got to win in October to get rid of that.
I also think he's done a pretty good job this year. Like, if you want to give him credit, I think he's deserving of it. But yeah, for the fans that have the idea of like, Ollie sucks, he should have been fired, blah, 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 I think that will require winning in October to change. I think that's the only way. Hell, for TLR, it required winning on October to be able to get some people off of his case. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 573. Guys, what do you think Jordan Walker's position will be long term?
Right field.
Same. Yeah.
I don't know why we get this question so often.
Probably because he's big and can play first, or because he's a natural third baseman and people want to move on from Nolan Arenado.
He's not a third baseman, though. We know that for sure. He's either a corner outfielder or first baseman. And he has a cannon of an arm and is super athletic. I'm going to have him play in the outfield as long as humanly possible until he can no longer play there, and then you move him either to DH or first base. But while he still has value out there, I want him playing in the outfield. From all reports, it seems like he's been good defensively this year, by the way.
Even when he was here.
It's a problem right now.
Yeah, even when he was here in St. Louis, he looked a lot better defensively. You know, he looked like a above-average right fielder in his time with the Cardinals when he was out there. So I think right field's his position long-term.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, do you think if the Blues extend Buchnevich, they would end up trading Jordan Kyrou?
No. If you extend Buchnevich, you're basically stating our core is Buch, Kyrou, Thomas moving forward. And then you hope that the second and third line players are coming through development. You sign Buch, you're stating that our top line for the next 6+ years, however long you sign Buch for, is Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou. So get on board with it.
And last thing here, guys, do you think that Brendan Donovan has been the Cardinals' most valuable player so far this season?
No. I would say win Gibson Burleson.
I'd give it to Sonny Gray, I think. I think Gray's been their best player, just overall. I know I've been the one that's been upset about him being pulled in 80 games, but he's been their best player overall. I'd say he's probably their MVP in my mind.
I think I would go Wynn. I think I would go with Mason Wynn as their best player.
Wynn is in a tier of his own.
Sonny Gray is way up there. Sonny Gray has been awesome, man.
I'd say the top three are Gray, Wynn, Burley.
That's probably true. The thing that Donovan has so much value for is, like, hey, we've got an injury in left field. Donovan's now our starting left fielder, and he's going to be really good out there. Hey, this hasn't happened this season, but hey, we got an injury at second base. Well, now Brendan Donovan is going to be playing there. Hey, we've got an injury at third with Nolan Arenado. Well, Brendan Donovan can go play over there for the next 3 weeks. Like, that's really where he becomes super valuable. You haven't had to do that this season with him outside of the outfield, which is kind of his primary position, I would say, at this point. So I would probably go Win 1, Gray 2, Burleson 3 would be my top 3 in terms of the order. Contreras, if he didn't get hurt, would be probably number 1. But
I'd agree with that.
Because he got hurt, I'll have him a little lower. Speaking of the Cardinals at the midpoint of the season, we're just 2 games away from that. There are teams already that are midway through their season. How would you grade them at this point? What grade would you give them for the first half of the season? We'll get into that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, coming up in about 10 minutes, we'll talk to Craig Button. I love him. He's one of the best in the business. He gives you his honest assessment. I remember, Alex, a couple of years ago, we talked to Craig Button, and we asked him about the Blues defensive core, and he said, nobody's scared about that defensive core. Nobody's scared to play against Torrey Krug.
I think he's got the T-Bone sense of confidence. He's like, I'd go to the front of the net against that defense.
We asked him at the deadline, I think this was 2, maybe 3 years ago now, about Zdeno Chara. He said, can't skate.
Nope, don't want him. Can't skate.
We're like, okay, good to know. He was right. He was proven correct. Nobody wanted him at that point in time. So Craig Button will give us his honest assessment about the Blues' current defensive core and what they could add to it this offseason via the draft and via free agency in about 10 minutes or so. But right now, we want to hear from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, because CBSSports.com put together their list of the midpoint grades for every team across Major League Baseball. We are officially to the midpoint for many teams in the sport. Cardinals are a couple of games away from it right now. They've played 79 games, but Alex, we're almost there. So for you, what grade, letter grade, would you give the Cardinals at roughly the midpoint of the 2024 season?
I would say
they gave him a B-, by the way.
Yeah,
so the Cardinals deserve a B- so far.
I would say a B- for what they did. I was thinking C+, because to me that's average, and you've been average this season, because as great as you've been, I also can't take away splitting a series against the Rockies, losing to the Astros, who have turned it around, losing to the Marlins, and then what you did in the first month and a half. But winning as many series consecutively as you have is why I think I would give them a little bit more of an upper hand, and I would go B-.
I think I would go right around the range. I'd probably go with a B. I think when you look at what they did in terms of like the offseason, they brought in these 3 starting pitchers, and those guys have been significant wins for them. Sonny Gray's been excellent. The rotation has somehow been able to survive the Steven Matz injury, even though there for a while it didn't look great. Offensively, the pieces didn't really come together the way that they were expecting, but now they're finally getting things in line the way they want, where they finally figured out, okay, Wynn and Burley, those are our top 2 hitters. We got Contreras back. We're moving Arenado down in the lineup. We'll see what happens when Gorman gets hot again. They'll probably bump him back up. The bullpen's been excellent. They've been able to right the ship from what looked like a stretch in which they were probably going to have to fire the manager, Ollie Barmole, and the hitting coach, Turner Ward. So with that, I'd say you probably get a B. I think from where you were after the first 40, 45 games to where you are today, you've been able to right the ship, which I didn't think they were going to be able to do, and put yourself into what we said in the first segment, which is you're a buyer. You are a buyer when you get to the trade deadline, so I would say it's probably a B for me.
I'm going to give you my answer here in just a second, but can we go through our top 10 real quick on the most important Cardinals list for 2024?
Oh, God. This is probably bad.
I'm curious what your thoughts are just on individual players. Have they lived up to expectations or not? Just a yes or no.
I can already tell you Jordan Walker was in mine, and he won't. So
Number 1 was Sonny Gray.
Yeah.
Number 2, Nolan Arenado.
No.
Nope. Number 3, Paul Goldschmidt.
No.
Nope. Number 4, Miles Michaelis.
Right now he has.
I'd say he's riding the ship, but I don't think where his numbers are what I expected. So I'd say no.
Miles Michaelis, 90 innings, 4.6 ERA. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
I didn't realize how
he was
bad
so
of a
bad
start
though that first
was.
month. But what? I mean, I have been the captain of the ship that Michaelis is just a hot streak, but I got to give him credit. This is beyond a hot streak right now.
It's been really good lately. Okay. Number 5, Larson Newbar.
No.
6, Wilson Contreras.
Yes.
This is, I would say yes, but also the injury totally changes everything. He's been out for 6 weeks.
I'd say it's not applicable because, he hasn't been around long enough.
I would say given the lack of availability, not his fault, I would say no. I would say you haven't gotten what you were hoping for because you wanted him to be available for you for the entirety of the season.
But when he's played, he's looked awesome.
Totally.
In both aspects of his game.
Brendan Donovan.
Yes.
Yes.
Jordan Walker.
No.
Yes.
Nolan Gorman.
No.
I would say he's pretty much been what you expect.
Yeah,
We're going through a down.
You can't
the next month he's going to go up, and then his numbers are going to look good again.
He's had 2 of them already, though, and if he wasn't that in the first month of the season, you might not have been as bad as you were.
I would say no on Gorman because, yes, I understand what you're saying if we were going to go through the ebbs and flows. He's 8% below league average now on the season.
Steven Matz.
No.
Well, also, Jordan Walker category.
He made our top
most
10.
important Cardinals.
Where were Burleson and
have
Wynn?
not lived up to expectations. I got to give them at least a B. At least a B. That is amazing. They have made it through the first half of the season with the vast majority of the guys that we decided were the most important players for this team in 2024 either significantly underperforming expectations or not being available to be able to live up to expectations. We had Mason Wynn at 11. We had Tommy Edman at 14, who has not yet played a game for the St. Louis Cardinals in 2024.
What about Burleson?
We had Giovanni Gallegos at 17, who it would have been better for them if he had never played a game for them in 2024.
Whoa.
We did not. We had Zach Thompson on this list, who basically has been banished to Memphis all year long. Keenan Middleton was right on the outside looking in. Alec Burleson was not in our top 20 because we didn't think he was making the roster on opening
What
day.
about Kyle Gibson?
Kyle Gibson was at number 15 on our final list.
Man,
and he's like top 5 right now.
3 of the 4 most important guys that we just listed off were bottom 15 in our top most in 20
It's like
list.
flipped. The guys that we thought were going to be super important have been less important.
We
The
need
guys
to
that we
stop
thought were
doing
going to be
these
less
lists.
important have become more important. And this is baseball, right? Weird stuff happens. And over 162, it is such a long season that like we'll do the same thing a month from now, and it will be different guys that are underperforming or overperforming at that point. That's what's fun about the sport. That's what's fun about following a team the way that St. Louis does. It's different than most other markets across baseball. Most other markets like check in every couple of weeks. Cardinals fans treat every single day like it's a football game, where that day's game is the most important thing for you that night. It's a lot of fun to be able to go through it this way with you guys throughout the course of the season, but it does kind of change the way that we consume baseball. And so for me, given how bad the start of the season was and given how many guys have underperformed or have been hurt, I've got to give it a B, even though, yes, I understand you're only 3 games above 500 and you have a negative 31 run differential so far this year. Pretty amazing that they've been able to get to this point where they are a clear-cut, identifiable buyer, and they're the second wild card, and I think arguably either the 3rd or 4th best team in the National League right now. It's pretty amazing. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we got to get back to the St. Louis Blues. How would you go about getting creative this offseason for the Blues? A couple of defensemen that might become available who could fit into that kind of a plan, and we're going to talk about that with Craig Button of NHL Analyst next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We are searching for Craig Button, TSN NHL analyst, former NHL general manager. He's great on the NHL draft, also great talking about some of the trends in the game. I remember a couple of years ago we were talking to him about the trend of small defensemen across the NHL, and T-Bone's got this cut for us ready to go. We were talking about the Blues' left side of their defense. Here's what he had to say. This was, I think, either last year or the year before.
When teams line up against the St. Louis Blues and you're playing against Nick Leddy and Torrey Krug, there's absolutely zero fear. There's absolutely zero feeling that they can make you uncomfortable. If you think you're winning with those two guys as your top two left side defensemen, no chance. No chance.
So we'll talk to him about that coming up here in just a little bit. Turns out about a year or two later, Blues still have to deal with those as their top two defensemen on the left side. They tried to change that last offseason by trading Torrey Krug. Obviously, he exercised his ability to have the no-trade clause, and here we are talking about it once again this year. Alex, we are now, a day away from the NHL draft. Blues are picking later in the draft this year than they did a year ago when they had a top 10 pick, and so things were a little easier to break down when you're talking about a top 10 pick as opposed to the middle of the first. I know you are you're looking into all of the NHL draft mocks and everything. Is there a guy that you see that you're like, this is my dude, I'm putting my Alex Ferrario stamp of approval on this name?
Yes, but it's like there's like 5 of them because last year it was a top 10 pick. So you knew like one of the dudes that you were so excited about was going to be there for you. This one, I really don't know who is going to be there. There's a kid named Carter Yakimchuk who most mock drafts
the name.
Great name. Most mock drafts I've seen have him going like 12 or 13. But to me, this dude looks like Evan Bouchard. He's like a 70 or 80 point producer on the defensive side. He's a left-handed defenseman. He's big. He can put up points. He can move the puck. So that's one. There's this Solberg kid from Norway who looks really good. Juracek from defenseman who also, there's 3 defensemen. Those are the 3 guys that I'm watching and saying, like, if they're available, those are the ones you try and target.
We do have Craig Button, NHL analyst for TSN, on the line right now. He joins us via the 101 ESPN hotline, former NHL general manager. Great on the draft, great on hockey as a whole. He joins us now here on BK and Ferrario. Craig, we appreciate the time as always, man. We were just talking about what the Blues could do this year in the first round. It's the middle of the first, not as easy to break down as it was last year when they were in the top 10 selections. But as you look at this year's NHL draft, are there guys that could go in the middle of the first round that you particularly enjoy watching or think could be good fits for this Blues team?
I mean, there's lots of them. There's not one. There's not 2. There's not 3. There's lots of them. And but there is. I mean, I'm not trying to evade the question. I mean, there's so many good players, and whether you want a defenseman or you want a center or you want a right winger or you want a left winger, they're all there. And for the St. Louis Blues now, where they're picking, waiting to see, what's going to be available. I do a mock draft, and I want to be very clear how I do the mock draft. I do a mock draft as if I'm the GM for each of the teams with a pick in the 32 in the first round. That's all it is. I have no idea or very little idea how the draft is going to unfold. But here's the thing. The NHL teams don't know for the most part how the draft is going to unfold. And the deeper you get down into the first round, and deep, understand, is it 10, 16, 20. You have to wait to see what's happened in front of you before you know. Is there a group of players that every team is kind of looking at? Yeah, we know Macklin Celebrini's going 1, and the Chicago Blackhawks know what they're going to do. But now the team picking 3 has to wait to see what Chicago does. And the team picking 4, the St. Louis Blues picking 16, are going to have to wait to 15 teams in front of them. And I can guarantee you this. They're looking at 5, 6 players. They probably have a group. It might be 4, but 4, 5, 6 players at 16. 2 or 3 of them will be there. And trust me, they don't have Macklin Celebrini or Ivan Demidov in that group that they're looking at. So they're looking at a group of players. And so who could that be? Could it be Trevor Connolly? Could it be Liam Greentree? 2 really good offensive players. Could it be Jet Lachenko, a really good two-way center? Michael Haig, a really good offensive center. Could it be a defenseman like Stian Solberg? Could it be somebody that like E.J. Emery, a really good, hard defensive defenseman? I mean, Michael Brandsteg Niger, a Norwegian hard, skating, really competitive right winger. I mean, I just named 6 guys without even batting an eyelash. I don't know. Maybe all of them will be there. Those are just guys that I think that are good players. And I always say this about the draft. know what you're looking to get, do the work on the players, and then when you make your decision, celebrate the players you're getting. It's going to be 3, 4, 5 years' time before these players are making any type of a dent into an NHL lineup.
Craig, I think a lot of Blues fans are hoping that there's a potential top pair or top 4 defenseman that's available at 16. And although I doubt that that's truly the case, does this feel like the type of draft that if you're the Blues, you're a little more aggressive to maybe move up to try and get one of those players? Or if you get to 16 and all of these guys are gone, is this a type of draft that you consider trading back and getting more picks?
Yeah, I think both those things. Watching the draft for 5 years and then, being around it, okay, all you hear about is, every team wants to move up. Just go back and look at the history of time and see how many teams moved up. It doesn't happen. Because the same thing that St. Louis may be looking at 16, other teams are recognizing, wait a sec, there's 5, 6 top pair defensemen here. We're not letting that go. And so we know, like Zeke Bullion, Zane Parekh, Sam Dickinson, Artem Leschunov, Anton Salaya, Carter Yakimchuk, 6 defenders right there that are not going to be at 16. There's no way they're going to be at 16. So unless you're going to do something really material to move up in a draft and give a team a chance to say, yeah, we'll do that and we'll move back, that's why it rarely happens, because other teams are looking at these 6 defenders and going, wow, we got a chance at a number 1 or certainly a top pair defender, and that's what these guys are. So, I would fall right off my chair if any one of those 6 are available after 12. So the St. Louis Blues, if they want to move up, they're going to have to make a significant move to allow a team to go, yeah, we'll consider that and we'll do that. But, are there other defenders that could be available? I mentioned E.J. Emery. I mean, Stian Solberg, who's a Norwegian, a really good player. You have Adam Yurchuk, who had a season-ending knee injury. You got to do the medical report. Everything I know about the reports that the NHL teams have got medically are all solid on Adam Yurchuk. So are you going to take a chance and draft him? Because he's a really good player. He might be one of those defenders that would go in the top 12 if he was healthy all year long. So those are the considerations that the St. Louis Blues make. But, you're going to draft a player and you're going to look at what you can do with that pick, whether and maybe you just say, listen, we're going to trade the pick for help right now. Maybe we're going to go and get a player that can come and help us right now. All the options are on the table for Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues, but the number of players that they're going to be able to consider are numerous. But those 6 defenders I just mentioned, not there at 16.
Craig Button is our guest here on 101 ESPN, NHL analyst for TSN and a former NHL general manager in his own right. We love having him on. We have him on regularly throughout the NHL season and then, of course, leading into the draft each and every year. Craig, the other thing that happens around this time of the year as we lead into the NHL draft is trades, like you just mentioned. And the Blues have an interesting decision to make on Pavel Buchnevich. 29 years old, makes $5.8 million, point-per-game player for the Blues, really good defensively as well. Everything you could ask for in a player. But 29 years old, Blues going through a bit of a retool right now. Questions about should the Blues re-sign him? Does he want to re-sign long-term? If you were in Doug Armstrong's shoes leading into this year's NHL draft, would your priority be to re-sign Pavel Buchnevich on a long-term big money extension or to trade him for the best return that you can possibly get?
Well, I'm going to go to the trade option first. There's multiple times you can trade a player of Pavel Buchnevich's quality. So you can do it now, and see what going into free agency, what's available. The salary cap's going up. There's been a thaw now because after COVID and everything with the CBA, what I call the COVID CBA expiring. So now everything's back to normal. So there's going to be opportunity there. But that's not the only time that you can move Pavel Buchnevich. I mean, trade deadline, we see lots of moves happen at the trade deadline where you get an opportunity again. So depending on how the St. Louis Blues look at the coming season and where they want to be and how they view their team with respect to, okay, can we be a playoff contender? What does rebuilding or retooling mean? And certainly the St. Louis Blues just missed making the playoffs last year. They had some good stretches. But at the same time, what do you want to do? There's a lot of good young forwards coming up for the St. Louis Blues. They need help on the blue line. Listen, I think Pavel Buchnevich is a really good player. 29 years old, he'll be 30 next year. What's long term? For me, long term for those guys, it's 5 years, no more. And so Doug Armstrong is going to know what the landscape is for him contractually, whether it be term and dollars. And when you start to hear from the players' representative what they're expecting, what they think is fair, and there's nothing wrong. Like Pavel Buchnevich says, hey, I need a 7 or 8 year deal. Nothing wrong, and he can go get it. But that doesn't mean you have to give it to him in St. Louis. And if I'm the manager, I'm not offering Pavel Buchnevich more than a 5 year deal. I'm not doing it. I'm not sucking on 36, 37, 38 years of age. And I know people say, well, that it'll be somebody else's problem. No, your job as a manager is to put the team in a good position and leave it in a good position, not leave it for somebody else to clean up your mess. And I know Doug Armstrong thinks exactly the same way.
So, Craig, you mentioned fixing the defense, and I think all of St. Louis agrees that defense is still the biggest issue for this team. They tried to fix it last year with the Krug trade, didn't work with the no-trade clause. With the free agent class and guys that are available and what the price is going to be, does this feel like a year that the Blues can fix their defensive problems?
It's not so much does it feel like a year, Tanya. When you identify what your problem is, it's your job to go and fix it. That's the job of the manager. I hear it all the time. Oh, yeah, it's hard to make a trade. It's hard to. Well, good. If it's so hard, I'll get somebody else to do the job then if it's so hard. You know what the problem is. Now go and fix it. Is it easy to fix your problems? No, it isn't easy to fix your problems. But you're going to advocate, oh, it's so hard? Well, good. Tell me how hard it is, and we'll consider other options to get somebody in the chair to do it. Again, I know Doug doesn't think like that. He's not afraid to be bold. He's not afraid to take the initiative in making moves. And you know what the problem is? Simple as this. If the St. Louis Blues don't fix their blue line, they're going to be touch and go to make the playoffs again next year. And I would say more go than touch.
I do want to ask you about a couple of names that have entered the mix today, Craig, because Jacob Trouba, it sounds like, could be on the move. Now, he's big money. He's about to be 30 years old, but it sounds like he could be traded. And then earlier today, it was announced that I was a little surprised by this. Ryan Suter's going to be bought out by the Dallas Stars, so he could potentially hit the market as well. That is a much older veteran player. I am curious because I love getting your perspective on these guys, Craig. Do you think either of those two players, given what they're likely to command on the market, could come in and help the St. Louis Blues defensively with what they need?
Zero interest in Ryan Suter. Forget it. Not happening. Go somewhere else. I wouldn't even entertain it. I wouldn't even consider him at the league minimum. You're not a guy that I feel can help you. Now, Jacob Trouba, 2 years, yes, an $8 million cap hit. I think what you have to ask yourself is, what are your expectations of Jacob, and what can you have around him to support him? I would be much more willing to consider a Jacob Trouba, knowing there's only 2 years left on that big contract. What he brings to the team, he brings obviously physical play. He brings an edge, but just as much as that, he keeps opponents on their toes. He keeps opponents, a little bit leery. And that's an element that certainly is coveted. It's certainly something that can help you. So depending on what the price is, and I'm talking about the price to acquire them, and if the New York Rangers are looking to just try to, extricate themselves from that contract, and that, well, you might be able to have them pick up a little bit of salary on it, and the cost might not be, you might be able to even gain a draft pick or something to take that contract off their hands. So all of a sudden now, I think that there's an appeal for Jacob Trouba. And listen, Ryan Suter, I don't want anybody to think that I don't have respect for Ryan Suter. That Ryan Suter's been a really good player in the National Hockey League. Too many miles, and the tread is worn off. And I don't think that he would be a good fit for the St. Louis Blues.
Craig, the one other offseason stuff we've talked a lot about are the potential of offer sheets this season. And with the cap moving up, it seems like it would be a more difficult process. But there are a lot of teams that are tight with their salary cap already and have to shed salary. Would this be an offseason you'd consider offer sheets?
It's amazing. I can set my watch and my calendar to this every year. But, we start talking about the RFA offer sheets. I'm just going to remind everybody, just go back and look at the history of offer sheets. If you're looking to use an offer sheet to acquire a player, it rarely works. It rarely works. It just doesn't work. Teams aren't ready to give up their good young players on an offer sheet, and they're not willing to go and take all the draft picks or whatever. And I get the idea. I get the concept. But it's not even so much about people say, well, managers won't do it because, there's an unwritten rule. No, here's the reality of it, is that they've looked at it and said, how do I acquire that player? You're going to have to significantly overpay to get the player, to get a team not to match. And then if you even try to come up and edge near the top part of it, a team's going, well, how can we give up this player? And now the draft picks we get, we're talking about 3, 4, 5 years down the road for year one, and then you extend it out. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And the other teams, you have to massively overpay to get a team not to match an offer sheet. Teams can't do that, as you just point out, because you're up against the salary cap. So every year I hear it. Every year I see the same result. At some point in time, we got to stop talking about it.
If they don't offer sheet Martin Necas and instead decided to make an offer for him, he's an RFA this offseason. Carolina's in a really interesting spot with a lot of their UFAs that they've got to potentially bring back. If the Blues decided to send an offer there, do you think Martin Necas can be a center in this league long term, Craig Button?
I think his best position is center. I think they put him on the wing, and I think it's harmed. When I say harmed, I think it's harmed the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm watching their team this year, and I like their team. I like what they do. And then I'm watching them in the playoffs. They don't have a second-line center. I go, oh, no, they do. They're just not playing him at center. Can you imagine Sebastian Aho? To me, that's a mistake by the Carolina Hurricanes, not putting a player in the position that I think he's best suited for. I see him as a center that can impact the game in a significant way. And certainly, if you're the Carolina Hurricanes, you say, oh, yeah, they won't match an offer sheet. And, what can you do to do? Well, they matched the Sebastian Aho offer sheet. And are they going to go down a path now of just saying, well, we'll take draft picks while all these players go out the door? Perhaps they do that, but all they're signaling is, oh, we're going to rebuild. Okay, if that's where you want to go, well, then that's a scenario that could play out like that. But I have, in my mind, having watched Martin play since he was 16 years of age, I think he's a center, and I think he'd be a really good one.
All right, Craig, final question for you. We've talked a lot over the last couple of years about a guy that's been a cap casualty from now potentially two different teams. It's Ross Colton, first with Tampa Bay, now potentially with Colorado as they're trying to sign some guys. Ross Colton, in your mind, what is he at this point in his career?
Well, I mean, I think Ross Colton is like a lot of players. You see what they do well, and you like what they do. I mean, he's a really good skater. He's going to give you a certain level of offense, nothing more, and usually nothing less. He impacts the game with his skating, and he's competitive. But depending on how a team plays, what type of speed do you want? What type of player do you want? Do you have enough offense? Are you looking for something a little bit different? And I think that's what happens with a lot of players. I'm going to give you an example of a player that I think is like that. Brandon Montour, who's going to be a free agent. Brandon Montour was drafted in the second round. I watched him in the USHL. Dynamic offensive player, and what you saw in Brandon was this player that jumped into the attack, initiated the attack, and was really good offensively. Well, he was younger. You're trying to get him to work on some different parts of his game when he's in Anaheim. Doesn't work out there. So now they move him. Now he goes to Buffalo. They're in a different space. He ends up in Florida, and they sit down and they say, listen, this is what you are. We're going to get support for you, and now you fit for us. And I think fit becomes a really good thing. It's not just fit with a team. It's who's around you, who can give you that support as you play your style of game. And I think that's a big part of team building. So with Ross Colton, he was part of a Stanley Cup winning team in Tampa Bay. What they asked him to do, he did it really well. Now, he became a cap casualty in Tampa Bay. I think it's about fit in Colorado. I'm not so sure that what they're looking to get from that spot and what they thought they were getting in Ross Colton, I think the fit isn't there in terms of stylistically. That doesn't mean that Ross can't go somewhere else and be a good fit. I just see stylistically a fit not happening there. Obviously, a salary cap casualty in Tampa, but I think it's fit in Colorado. So looking at players, players sometimes fit in one place and not in another, and I think that becomes another part of the equation when you're looking at adding players in your group, and I think that's the situation with Ross.
You're not going to get a better, honest assessment of players, situations in the NHL than you do with Craig Button. We always enjoy being able to catch up with him. Craig, I know this is an unbelievably busy time for you, so we sincerely appreciate you hopping on with us today. All the best to you. Enjoy yourself with the NHL draft coming up tomorrow. We'll talk with you again soon, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
See you, Craig. That's Craig Button, NHL analyst for TSN, former NHL general manager. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Craig J. Button. I genuinely think he is my favorite person to talk about hockey with. He's fantastic, and he gives you true, honest assessment. There is no sugarcoating anything. This is what I think of a player. This is where I think he fits. This is why I don't think he makes sense for the Blues, or vice versa. Yep. I have a lot of thoughts on what we just heard.
I do too.
From Craig Button. As you guys can probably imagine, we're going to get to all of them coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Rhino Shield. If you're looking at the exterior of your home and you think it needs a new look, then it's time to call Darren. Get him out there, have him give you the expert opinion, and get a free estimate of what the exterior paint coating is going to look like. Why I love Rhino Shield so much is because it's not paint. When you hear me say paint, that's the stuff that you're going to buy over the counter at a hardware store, and over time, that's going to deteriorate. Rhino Shield is a ceramic coating process that sticks 8 to 10 times thicker than any paint you're going to buy. And what that means is it's 100% waterproof. It's not going to get washed away over time with all of the rain, moisture, things like that. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. You're covered with all of the hot sun beating down on your home, and it's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. I could back this because I had Rhino Shield Darren do the work 3 years ago on our home, and it looks brand new today. So get them out there, have Darren give you a expert opinion, and get the coating of a Rhino on your home. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25-RHINO.com.
Terrence here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals took 2 of 3 from the Atlanta Braves with their win in Game 2 yesterday, 4-1. Tonight they start a 4-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. 6:45 will be first pitch as Miles Michaels will get the start for St. Louis. The SportsCenter update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
There's nobody better in the NHL's analyst game than Craig Button. He's fantastic. If you missed any of our conversation with him, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Alex, somebody on the text line said they wish other people in sports, like the analysts that are national, would give opinions like what Craig Button just did with us and would give honest, thoughtful takes on what's taking place locally with these individual players. And I responded to the text and I said, the problem is it's really hard to do, like unbelievably difficult to be prepared enough to have the information in front of you, to have consumed enough video to be able to know what these players are, where they're at in their respective careers, and to have the information like Craig Button does of being a former NHL general manager of this is what it takes to build a team as well. And so unless you have all of that, you can't give the kinds of takes that Craig Button does. And honestly, most national analysts, like if we have national analysts on our station to talk about your favorite team, the St. Louis Cardinals, the vast majority of them know less about your team than you do. It's just the truth, because they don't watch your team as much as you do. Now, there are times where, like, we'll have Eno Saris on, who is as informed on pitching as anybody in the business. And so if you ask him about pitching, Cardinals-wise, you'll get really, really, really good thoughts. Or somebody that's recently written a piece about the Cardinals, they'll have some good thoughts. But very few are as opinionated and as informed as Craig Button is. So let's get to what he had to say, Alex. What was your biggest takeaway? Because I think we can go in like 5 different directions from his opinion.
Honestly, I would just pick and choose because there were like 5 biggest takeaways.
What do you want to start with? You want to start with Trouba?
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess let's start with the defense because I think with Trouba and with Suter, they can shoot both of those down.
For people that have not seen the news today, there are 2 new defensemen that are in the news. One, Ryan Suter, who he just flat out said, not interested, he can't help you. 39 years old, about to be 40. He was a defenseman for the Stars last year. We both thought, Alex, when we saw this news, hey, that guy could come in and maybe help you out a little bit on the blue line. Button basically said, not interested. Don't do that.
I've changed my mind on the Suter.
Yeah, me too. I just, by the way, like just to justify my thought process, because I know I tweeted out, like I looked at that as a veteran minimum where you bring the guy in and you can hope that you can at least get some expertise from him. But like he said, I don't even know if you can get expertise from Ryan Suter right now. It might be to the point where Suter says, bleep it, I'm done.
So that was one. The next one was John Jacob Trouba, who is, according to multiple reports, potentially and maybe even likely to be traded from the New York Rangers. Now, if you're not familiar, right-handed defenseman, 29, about to be 30 years old this year. He's got 2 more years on his contract, $8 million per year. He has a 15-team no-trade list. Apparently, the Rangers have asked him to submit that 15-team no-trade list so they can work with half of the league on potentially getting a deal done. Now, you may be saying, the Blues really going to take on $8 million to add to their blue line? The answer might be no. But if you wanted to get creative this offseason, Alex, and the Rangers really want to get out of that salary, the Blues might be the kind of team that could do something. Now, it would be better if he was a left-handed defenseman. That would fit more with what the Blues need. However, if you're just telling me, hey, you can upgrade one spot on your defensive core this offseason, that would be good. I don't care where it's at, honestly. He's big, he's physical, he plays the style that the Blues need to get better at in front of their own net. $8 million is a lot, but it's only 2 years. He is kind of in that age range of this guy could be good for the next 5 years because he's a defenseman, and I don't expect those guys to drop off the way that a forward typically would. If they were willing to take on, like, I don't know, Brandon Saad, for example, who's on a totally reasonable 2-year, $4 million per season deal right now to be able to offset some of that money, Alex, it's the kind of deal I would legitimately consider if I'm in Doug Armstrong's shoes because it's the kind of deal that rarely becomes available to you with this kind of a defenseman.
I'm with you. The tough part for me is just he's not a left-handed defenseman because, like, you've got then Parayko, Trouba, and Falk on the right side. And, I mean, I just listed a total of, if you're able to move Brandon Saad to the point you just made, you're talking about $17.5 million on the right side, and you're still so bad on the left side. The part that I'm more intrigued because of Trouba is Trouba plays the brand that people have been begging for in St. Louis. It's physical. He is a leader. I mean, he was wearing the captain for the New York Rangers over the last couple of years. So, like, he is somebody that brings the presence that the Blues need. It's just such a tough situation because he doesn't fit the time frame that they're talking about. He doesn't fit the need, which is the left side.
I'll push back on that. If he doesn't, then neither does Colton Parayko. Colton Parayko's 31 years old, man.
Agreed.
So
but
if
Colton
Jacob
Parayko's
Trouba,
here, I don't know if you're acquiring. And if you didn't have Justin Falk, I'd be all on board with Jacob Trouba. If you can move on from that contract, I'm in. Because right now I've got two guys that are on that time frame, and a third one might be to the point where I'm looking. It feels a lot like what the Blues did when they acquired Justin Falk. Like, you had three dudes on the right side, and you were thinking, that's great, but you can't play three right-handers 23 minutes a night. So what are you going to do with it? If Trouba was a left-handed defenseman,
third-pair defenseman,
I'm with you.
Like
I'm absolutely with you.
I'm being totally honest. Like, why can't they do that?
Because now you've got $13 million tied up into two guys, then you're bringing in $8 million for the next 2 years.
Okay.
I get it, but you're still so bad on the left side.
Yeah, but this guy makes my left side better. Like, I now have one person on every single pair that I feel comfortable with. And yes, it's a lot of money, but I've also got a lot of young forwards that are coming up. This probably would necessitate you to trade Pavel Buchnevich this offseason.
I don't know if Jacob...
Money's not a problem for the Blues
I don't know if
man.
Jacob Trouba makes you better defensively on the left side, though, because he's still playing with a Tyler Tucker or a Scott Perunovich or a Torrey Krug.
Jacob Trouba?
Yeah.
No, he's probably playing with Kessel.
Yeah.
Well, Kessel's a right-handed defenseman.
Oh, I can move him to the left side, though. He's shown an ability.
Yeah, we said that before, and look what happened with Justin Falk his first year with the Blues. Like, typically guys play their normal side of the ice, and it's just I love Jacob Trouba, but there's also a reason the Rangers are trying to move off from him, because the guy wasn't even playing top 4 minutes. And so if you didn't have Justin Falk and Torrey Krug, Jacob Trouba would make the most sense, because he's just available and teams are trying to get rid of him. But because you're already stacked on the right side with guys that are here, you desperately need a left-handed defenseman. Now, could you convince Trouba to play the left side? Probably.
I don't think so, because he played almost exclusively on the right side when he was. I'm just looking at this right now because I wanted to see were there situations where he played on the left.
Yeah,
he played almost exclusively on the right side while he was in New York this year.
Yeah,
he did have, like, Fox played on the left side with him, so it was Fox who moved over to the other side occasionally, not Trouba. So
and typically those puck movers can move to their offhand because that benefits them to move the puck a little bit easier. So it's just, again, I think Trouba brings people were excited about Nikita Zadorov. Trouba is a smaller version, but a just as physical version of Zadorov. It's just the right side to where Parayko, like Kessel, I think is going to be playing more minutes than Falk next season at times because they like the upside with it. And you bring in a Jacob Trouba, you're just thinking, where are we getting this ice time from?
So that was the other one, is Jacob Trouba. And again, that's, hey, want to get creative this offseason?
That's
Here's a potential option.
Absolutely.
For you. I would give serious consideration in that scenario. It's trading Justin Falk. Like, keeping, I know nobody wants to, but potentially keeping Torrey Krug and trading Justin Falk. They won't do that. I know that. They've made it very clear that's not the route that they would like to go. But in that scenario, I think you're upgrading on the right side from Falk to Trouba. Also, he fits more stylistically and size-wise, physicality with what you need. But anyways, that was the other thing. The other thing to keep in mind was what he said about Martin Necas and Ross Colton. So the Ross Colton one was basically, if fit matters in the NHL, he's not a good fit in Colorado. I don't know if that means he would be a good fit here or not.
Well, but what I think Craig was saying was Colorado was hoping they had a second-line center in him, and Ryan Johansson played more on the second line because Colton didn't live up to that, and then they had to trade for Casey Middlestat.
I think Ross Colton is a third-line center on a contender.
I would agree.
I think he could be your second-line center while you're waiting for Dalibor Dvorsky to take over in that role. But on a contender, he's probably a third-line center, so keep that in mind. Martin Necas, I thought what he said was really interesting.
Yeah.
Where he said he is a center. He has been misused in his time in Carolina. And if he were to become a center here, you probably get a little bit more. I have so much trust in the coaching staff with Rod Brindamore that it's hard for me to believe that they just completely misutilized this piece for the last few years. But this stuff happens, man. Sometimes, especially when you're in contend mode, and you would have to potentially get him to, get better on the face-off dot. That might take some time, and it will take some struggles, and it might end up with you losing games in season potentially because of that. The Blues are in a situation where they can afford to have him kind of learning on the job as a centerman in the NHL. Most of the last few years, the Carolina Hurricanes could not have that situation.
Well, and in terms of misusing, like everybody does that. I mean, look, we were talking about how the Blues weren't using Jake Neighbors properly until the month of January when they started using him more as a net front presence in the top six. So everybody's going to go through this. I think that's the most important move that's going to be made by a team is going to get Martin Necas, because I do believe there's untapped potential there. And I know he shot down my offer sheet that I've been saying, like, you should do offer sheet. And on one hand, I understand what Craig Button's saying, because it does not happen very often. But the only reason, and I probably didn't portray this correctly, but teams are so tight in cap situations right now that this is an offseason that if you're a GM, and Doug Armstrong talked about that, like,
and the Blues are not tight. That's the other thing that is unique.
You don't have to wait. You've got picks.
Do not have the scenario that most teams are in, which is they're trying to get to July 1st to be a player in free agency. Blues really aren't. Blues aren't in that situation this year, so they could potentially go out there and acquire one.
Yeah, and that's just where I'm at. Whether it's Martin Necas, where I mean, like if Craig Button, and I agree with Craig Button, but like if that's true. I mean, you trade Pavel Buchnevich because you heard what he said about Buch. I'm not going past 5 years. And I'm almost guaranteeing you that Buch's side is going to want 6+ years.
Yep.
And if I'm not going past 5, well, now we're talking trade conversation.
All right, last thing here. This is NHL news. We haven't passed this along yet. The Oilers announced earlier this morning that Ken Holland is going to be walking away from his job as the general manager with the Edmonton Oilers. The way that they put it out with their statement was the Oilers and Ken Holland have mutually agreed that his contract will not be extended beyond the end of its current term, which is now. They don't have a general manager right now.
That's good when you're in a contract conversation with probably the second most important player on your team. That's great.
What could go wrong?
Nothing.
How does this happen, dude? This is
the rumors of Holland stepping down have been here for at least a year.
And for those that weren't listening yesterday, Leon Draisaitl, it's real. He's up for extension this offseason, and if he does not want to be extended, you probably have to trade him. Like, you can't go into his walk year and have what happened with the Calgary Flames, where suddenly the entire team falls apart because one guy left via free agency and they were caught with their pants down. Like, I don't know what happens here, but not having a general manager for Leon Draisaitl to talk to about, hey, what's our plan? How are we going to go about the next iteration of the Edmonton Oilers when I'm making $14 million and Connor McDavid is making $15 million, which is 2 years away from happening? What's it look like at that point in time when we're combining for about $30 million against the cap? Well, you can't talk to anybody because that guy that is making those decisions is not currently employed by the team.
It's
not
funny
great,
we're talking
considering
about this.
That's 4 days away.
How about this? He's Jeff Jackson, who's the CEO essentially right now. He's the acting general manager until they figure this out. Somebody asked him about Leon Draisaitl. Quote, "I don't feel the pressure of any date to do this. We've got a year to work on it." Yeah, okay. Sure. That's not what you want to hear if you're Draisaitl's side.
And he said that they're going to wait till the GM's in place. He said critically important for a GM to be named before the negotiations start.
So
Yeah.
4 days.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You could really go through those interviews and take your time on them, as you have 4 days to then name that person, and their first job is within the next 24 hours decide what you're doing with Leon Draisaitl. Please meet him and tell him your entire 5-year plan.
So you want the job, right?
Some of the best movement in the conversations for trade and sculpting your roster for the next season takes place tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday in Vegas, where the draft is. They don't have a general manager. They don't have somebody to deal with this. Think of that for a minute.
Dude, look at their cap sheet right now. They have like 10 players currently employed for the 2025 season. Free agency is a week away, man.
If let's just hypothetically say you want to trade for Leon Draisaitl. Who are you calling?
I'm not sure they've ever had a more pivotal offseason. Well, let's say in the last 15 years, right? They haven't had a more pivotal offseason, and they don't have somebody to make the decisions for said pivotal offseason. Good luck.
You sucked for 12 years to get the picks of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and that tower might fall down in 2 consecutive seasons.
The junk drawer is next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in a little bit, we'll talk about Matthew Liberatore. Has he earned another start? We'll get to that here in the next segment. But, Alex, this weekend is Luka's first birthday party. Not his first birthday, but his first birthday party. We've got his first birthday coming up next week, and we didn't want to do it the same weekend because this thing can be stressful.
Yeah.
Did you guys do first birthday parties?
Yeah, we did first birthday parties. The first was the, entire family. So, aunts, uncles, we had them all. The first one, we did it at some type of, I don't know, it was like some type of rec center where we rented out a room. And then the second one, Emma's, that one we did at our house because it was July. And we're like, oh, we got a pool, we got a backyard. Terrible idea because it was so freaking hot out. But yeah, first one was the entire family. And then everything else right now is just our immediate family.
Did you guys do food? Did you get the food for it?
So, yeah. So, first Adelaide's we did where we just did a big sandwich from, I think it was either Walmart or Schnucks. We just got a big sub sandwich and served it for everybody. I was the idiot that said I could just grill stuff for Emma's, and I had to make brisket and pulled pork for 35 people.
So, Kara's family, we're expecting 80.
Jeez. T-Bone, you and I weren't even invited.
I know.
You guys are more than welcome to come by. We are getting food for everybody, so you'll have food.
Don't feel pressure to invite us now that we've brought it up.
That was a pity
you guys
invite.
Didn't want to come, frankly.
Your assumption's right, but
I love birthday
an
parties.
offer would have been nice.
I love
Alex,
birthday
because
parties.
he's got his kids and a pregnant wife at home.
Oh, yeah, she won't come.
On a Saturday, I've got better things to do, which is literally doing nothing than coming to your birthday party in North County for your son.
Katie is exactly at the stage where she doesn't want to leave the house.
I assume T-Bone would be half a bottle deep into some whiskey, sitting in his underwear with the globe behind him, watching some kind of baseball.
You could do that at the birthday party.
Yeah. So we're going to be at a church.
Very true.
We're going to be at a church gym with my son. He's turning one.
Just rent out a church gym?
With his smash cake in front of him.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that, man.
I know. Oh, had to get the best one.
They won't even do anything with it.
I know. I can't wait. It's gonna
Daughter
be great.
stared at it for 30 minutes, and I put her hand in it, and it was...
So we didn't get into an argument over this the other day, I wouldn't say, but we had a discussion about it.
And you lost.
Do you know how expensive it is to feed 80 people?
Yeah, I do actually. It's called a wedding. There's more than that.
$500?
Yeah, that's why I cooked for the second one.
He's gonna remember this for life.
No, he won't,
Dude.
He won't.
We're going with a grocery store that is going to be providing all the food, catering wise. We're doing mac and cheese, salad, and chicken fingers. Yeah.
What kind of salad? Legit, lettuce?
I mean, it's like a pre-made salad.
Oh, okay.
So it's $500 for all of this to be provided for the 80 people, right? When I saw what it was going to cost, I was like, Kara, do we need to do that?
You trying to cancel the birthday party?
I was going to cancel. I said, could we check a sandwich shop to see if it would be cheaper? And there's a sandwich shop in town that does the little 4-inch subs or whatever, right? Yeah. The mini subs. I was like, what if we got one of these for everybody? She was like, Brandon, we can't provide a quarter of a sandwich for everybody. I was like, yeah, we can.
You know what you do?
We absolutely can.
Tell them to eat before they come. Just eat before you get here. And then we'll be good. We'll just have the birthday party. So why don't you I'm looking at the menu right now. Why don't you just drive through McDonald's and order 50 10-piece chicken McNuggets?
See, I'm down for that.
That's less than $500. I'm looking at it right now. It's $275.
Somebody said 80 people should be $80 to $100 or $800 to $1,000. Paying only $500 is really low, actually. You're lucky, BK. Dude, I am baffled.
Why are you spending $100 a person on a meal?
I'm baffled by this. I just don't understand. Why do we do this?
You know what we did?
I'm excited for Luka's first birthday. I think it's going to be fantastic. But we as a society have got to be better than this.
Somebody
when
brought
your child turns 1, you don't have to provide food for everybody. Everybody bring your own food or eat lunch before you come to the birthday party.
Someone brought
or breakfast, something.
Well, I hope a lot of the party people are listening to this segment. And BK griping about feeding them.
I'm excited to have Kara told me, she's like, they're going to bring gifts. We got to provide a meal for them. I was like, this isn't a wedding, man.
Someone brought up a really good point. The reason BK can't cook for everybody is because Keith doesn't allow him to grill.
Oh, yeah, that's tough.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Somebody said that it should be $800 to $1,000. Why are we spending $100 a person on food?
Well, it's $10 per person on food.
That's correct math. That's correct math right there. That is correct math. 800 would make a lot more sense than
Alex,
8,000.
that's T-Bone on BK.
Yeah, Alex, your math is a little off. A little?
It's close enough.
Whole digit off.
Carried to the zero and dropped it down to
I
the
work in
bottom.
decimals. I got the metric system in my mind. I'm part Canadian, so it makes sense.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of Believe It or Not. I'm sure I'm going to get a text, believe that or not. Coming up next, Matthew Liberatore has earned another start. Yay or nay? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
I really hope Matthew Liberatore gets a gift, and they say, hey, that was a great performance. Let's see what you can do again in 5 days or 4 days. And if that is the case, watch out, because the talent is there for this young guy to be that massive surprise in the rotation that could change things for the St. Louis Cardinals.
That was Greg Amsinger, always the optimist, earlier today on the opening drive. If you missed any of their conversation, the podcast page is up right now. You should go check it out after our show. 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN apps where you go to find it. All presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Alex Liberatore was awesome yesterday. 6 scoreless innings, 8 strikeouts, a new career high. He retired 15 of the 17 batters after Kellenic had that leadoff single, no base runner in the entirety of his performance, advanced beyond second base. His slider is a new weapon for him. He's been using it as his most used pitch so far this season. Yesterday, 10 whiffs on the 17 swings against his slider. That is not out of the norm. He is now getting a whiff on that pitch about 45% of the time so far this year. Opposing hitters are only batting 110 against it. 1 out of every 10 times they connect, they get a hit off of it. It's been an amazing pitch for him, and it's a revelation to the point where he uses it against both lefties and righties. He's finally figuring out how to be a legitimate big league pitcher. But the question is he a big league starter now? My answer to that is still no. I would still utilize him out of the bullpen because he has become a weapon for you out of the pen. He's able to be used regularly. He can give you length. He can give you leverage. Like whatever you need, he can do it for you. What yesterday did for me, Alex, was open up my eyes more for the future. If he can do that, he can eventually be a starter for the Cardinals. And maybe you're just going to have to do the long play where you use him out of the pen this year. That's his ability to adjust to the big leagues. And then next year he comes back and hopefully he can be your number 5 starter. You treat him next year the way you treated Zach Thompson this year. You are the favorite going into opening day to be our number 5 starter. And if it works out, great. If not, hopefully they've got better depth by then. That's how I currently view Matthew Liberatore. Do you guys disagree? Would you give him another start the way that Greg Gamsinger said earlier today he would?
I would not give him another start. I agree with you. As great as that was, we've seen this before with Liberatore. And the Tampa Bay Rays game last year was this, to where you see a sign of life and you're like, whoa, what is this? And then, like last year, it fell quick, and then you had to adjust on the fly. You don't have to adjust on the fly right now with Liberatore. You know where he's great at, and it's out of the bullpen, high leverage, has a lefty arm, which you desperately need if JoJo Romero's not right. And the thing about it is, for a lot of people that are getting a little too excited about last night and what he did, it's like, oh, you got to put him back in the rotation. He's got starter potential. He had an entire offseason to work on being a starter. He started 13 games last year in Memphis for them on top of the 11 that he started for the Cardinals, and then spent the offseason training as a starter. And he didn't win the job out of spring training. He lost the job to Zach Thompson out of spring training, which wasn't really even a competition. Yeah. So I'm not going to get overly excited and ruin what has been a strength for my team this season off of one start against an Atlanta Braves team that was playing a doubleheader.
I still need to see more from him against righties. Yesterday was a great sign, dude, because that lineup is loaded with either right-handed hitters or a switch hitter that does better against righties than they do against lefties. So Matthew Liberatore is the exact kind of guy I wouldn't want against that lineup. And yet, he went out there and right-handed hitters had exactly 0 hits against him yesterday. So, pretty damn impressive. But so far on the season, and this isn't including yesterday, right-handed hitters are still batting .265 against him with an OPS of .820. That would be 35% above league average offensively, which would be like the second best on the St. Louis Cardinals for context. The only guy that's been better this year overall than what right-handed hitters have been against Libby, it would be Wilson Contreras. That player would be the second best hitter on the Cardinals this year. So I just need to see more. I need to see more of him there. And you can do that out of the bullpen. If he proves himself moving forward that, hey, this slider is so good and it is so effective against righties as well, that I can get right-handed hitters out at maybe not the same rate as lefties, but at a requisite level, okay, then eventually there will come a point in time where you have to say to yourself, hey, he's proven so much, I've got to give him a chance. I think that's unlikely to happen this season, but it very well could happen by the end of the year where you open up your eyes to say this offseason, we can go into next year without bringing back Lance Lynn, for example, and with penciling in, not putting in pen, but penciling in Matthew Liberatore as our 5th starter, one of the 5 in our rotation for opening day. That's what he could prove to me, but right now I'm just not trusting him enough against right-handed hitters to say that is something that was sustainable. T-Bone?
Yeah, I think if you're going to go with him as a starter, you have to have faith that he can get right-handers out. And though yesterday was a good sign, I'm with you. I think you need to see it more sustained over the rest of the season to where maybe you do start to look at him in lower leverage spots, try and get him more opportunities against righties and not just pick those lanes that Ollie's talked about where they would prefer 2 left and 1 righty to try and get him through an inning. Maybe you start to pick some more lanes where there's more right-handed hitters and see if it works. But until you see sustained success against right-handed hitters, then he's a bullpen arm. And that's where he should be for this year because I think right now He's the second best lefty that can come out of your bullpen when he's there, and he's got swing and miss stuff for you when you go there. And honestly, he could become your number one lefty by the time we get towards October, depending on how JoJo is pitching, because he's kind of going through a weird spurt right now. I think you're better suited this year to have him as kind of a left-handed, high-leverage arm that can maybe be a swingman for when these kind of occasions do occur where you do maybe need a spot start where he can maybe eat 3-4 innings for you. And then in the offseason, you can try and determine his path. If he's starting to get right-handers out, okay, go stretch out as a starter, and we'll look back at this once we get to spring training, and then we'll go from there. But as of right now, I don't think you give him another start. He goes back to the pen.
I also just think your bullpen is too light if you try to keep him ready to go 5 days from now. Like, what they would probably have to do is go with the 6-man rotation and have him as one of the 6 for the foreseeable future, and you're just too light in your bullpen to be able to do something like that. So I don't think it's something they will or should do. What they will probably do, though, is as we get closer to the deadline, trade for a starter. That's probably more likely than using Matthew Liberatore long-term as a starter. The Athletic put together a list earlier today, guys, of the 92 players likely or potentially getting traded at this year's deadline.
This will be good.
They ranked them. They ranked all of the starting pitchers that, according to them, could be dealt at the deadline. Now, I'm going to give you the second tier of these starters first, and then we'll get into the guys that they think are, quote-unquote, frontline starters. These are some of the names. We've discussed some of them before. Jordan Montgomery, Eric Fetty, Tyler Anderson, Andrew Heaney, Michael Lorenzen, Paul Blackburn. Man, this is just a list of guys that we've talked about over the last 5 years. Martin Perez, Marco Gonzalez, Jose Quintana. Some of these guys are on the IL or returning from injury, but that's the mid-rotation starters that they think could be available this year at the deadline. You ready for the frontline starters, boys?
Sure.
This will be good.
I'm going to start at 9 and get you to number 1.
Oh.
Okay.
Start backwards. I like it.
Frankie Montas.
No.
Nathan Eovaldi.
Okay.
If the Rangers are out of it, he would be a guy that I would be very interested in.
He's the dude that always performs in the playoffs, so I'd be on
love
that.
Nathan Eovaldi. I would consider extending him as well. He's exactly the kind of pitcher that I think could help the
Let's
Cardinals.
pump the brakes over there, okay?
Getting a little too excited.
Yeah, coming down.
Luis Severino.
He was, like 7?
7.
It's trash.
Blake Snell.
He's been...
Can I get last year's Blake Snell?
Justin Verlander. I don't think the Astros are going to sell.
And that dude is old.
Max Scherzer. Not interested.
Nope.
Jack Flaherty. Nope. We're at number 3. Number 2. Yusei Kikuchi.
Yes.
No.
That
And number
guy
1 is
trash.
Garrett Crochet, who's not eligible to come to the Cardinals because they're not going to pay what it's going to cost to get him. The number 1 starter not named Garrett Crochet, according to The Athletic. This is a neutral observer of Major League Baseball. Eno Saris was a part of this project, ranking the best pitchers in the league. I trust nobody more than him. He was the one that said, hey, Shota Imanaga, that's the guy that I think will be better right away than Yamamoto. He was totally right on that. Yusei Kikuchi, according to them, second best starter likely to be available at this year's deadline. Let's start it now.
Yeah. Coochie.
Crazy for Kikuchi.
Oh, that's terrible.
No. Terrible.
No?
No, terrible.
Yeah, I'm not...
We'll get something.
Are you talking about like the Cardinals getting a pitcher or come up with a name for
We'll
it?
come up with a name for it.
Well, you probably won't get either.
You
The
need-
name or actually Kikuchi.
Yearning for Yusei?
No. That's
no.
terrible.
Awful.
No.
No, don't.
Just
Stop.
leave the nicknames to the
You know,
professional.
I don't want him anymore.
All right.
Those two are so bad, I don't even want him
Out
anymore.
on
I say
Kikuchi
we
because of
want
you.
Yusei.
You say Kakuche. No, that's not even his name.
That's his name, man.
I know, but I don't.
This is terrible. Guys, this is
Anyway,
embarrassing for
moral
all of
the
us.
story, the number 1 non-Garrett Crochet option at the deadline, according to The Athletic, is Yusei Kikuchi, a left-handed starter for the Blue Jays who's really solid. Just a really solid pitcher. I think I might prefer Nathan Eovaldi, if I'm being totally honest with you. I think Eovaldi would be my number 1 option.
Well,
on this list.
Rosenthal had in his piece that, the Blue Jays need to come to reality and start shipping guys out. And he said,
Dude, they're terrible.
He said, do they move Gossman? And if Gossman becomes available, that's the dude I'm going after.
Man, he's not had a
I
very
say,
good
hasn't he been bad
Get
this
it,
year?
but I've also seen what the upside looks like, and I'll go off of the Toronto sucks, so most of the players are going to have bad years. I'll try and regain what Gossman had prior to this bad year with Toronto.
He's really good command. It's just like you're betting on one pitch. You're saying, I think that the split finger is still really good. And if it's not, you're screwed.
Yep.
If it is, he's going to be amazing for
And you get, 2 more years of him, too? I think he's locked up to 2026.
He has another, 2 years left on his contract. He's 33 years old. I mean, it feels very Cardinals-y. I like Kevin Gossman. I've always really liked Kevin Gossman. It's just a riskier proposition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's making $22 million per year on average. It's not bad.
That's cheaper than what you're going to have to pay if you go to the free agent market next year.
I want Kikuchi still.
I know you do. You say Kikuchi.
Been my guy
Cuckoo
since
for
day one.
Kikuchi.
Get the no, that sounds dirty. You can't say that, man. You can't do that.
Coming up next.
Come on, man.
We got a game of Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario, we'll tell you if we're believing it or not here on 101 ESPN.
BK's final day. Woo!
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free. We're flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it Just me.
Oh, it feels so good when it's your Friday on a Thursday with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. You give us a scenario.
Do you ever
We
work?
are telling you if we are believing it or not here on 101 ESPN.
Just not listening to us like he typically does. Hey guys, 2 segments later, did you hear Dakota Joshua signed a contract?
Well, me
Thanks
and
for
Ferrario
listening.
Had a full 5-minute conversation on it.
I was busy, all right? That's
Sure you were. See, Brandon
Looking
Sott's
at-
available via trade?
looking at
we
food
talked
for the
about that
birthday
last
party.
week. Trying to find ways to make $500 because you lost it on food. And you're going to sleep on the couch, man. It's a bad day for
I
you.
wanted to clarify. I'm really excited about the birthday party for Luca. I know it didn't sound that way during that segment, and I apologize for that. Sometimes you guys know tone, and
You don't got to apologize
All
to
that.
me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I live it every day.
I want people to know I love my son very much. I'm very proud of my son for everything that he does, including being an absolute wild man. I was just surprised. It was sticker shock. That was it.
Sure was. Sure was. You're gonna
excited.
be mumbling under your breath while everybody at your party's eating food like you made me pay $500.
Don't throw that away.
$800, you son
You
of a.
eat that.
Yeah. Hey,
Clean your plate.
don't you put that in the
You know it
trash
was
can.
$10, right? You know it was $10.
You put that in a Ziploc bag. That's coming home with me.
The other thing is, like, Kara's family is so unbelievably kind to us and has helped out so much with Luca. So, anyways.
T-Bone, if I was at that party, I would stand over a trash can and take a bite and just.
You're the worst.
In the
Never
trash
make
can.
that sound again, by the way. Believe it or not, boys, the St. Louis Cardinals are trading for Nathan Eovaldi at the deadline.
I'm going to say not believe this because if I'm Texas, I'm going to have the false hope that I'm going to be a playoff team still. And I don't know if they're going to trade pieces out. I think it's
6 games back right now with the wild card, man.
Yeah.
They're in a bad place.
I think if you're Texas, though, you're just thinking, like, we can get back into this.
Good point. This offseason, they did pretty much go all in.
Did they?
No, not at all.
Did they?
They let everybody walk, and they were like, we have no money. Our TV deal is a massive concern. We just
that's
won the
fixed,
World
though.
Series. Found money. We're good for the next 5 years. Good luck.
But all of that's fixed now. The TV deal's all worked out for them,
Sure,
right?
yeah, no, definitely.
I'm going to say not believe it, though.
I'm going to say not believe it just because I don't know what they want, and I can't seem to figure it out. We were talking about that during the break.
Thomas and JC.
You didn't have them.
Whoa, man,
was a
that's a
Ranger.
that's a
That's the only reason I
valuable
mentioned it.
piece. TK Roby.
I forgot you. Yeah, just give them back what we got in
Roby,
Montgomery.
Thomas and
Here,
JC.
have it back. We won Eovaldi.
You give us the veteran pitcher this time around. We'll win the World Series this time. You guys won the last one.
Now you could really pump the brakes.
Well, they have interest in Ivan Herrera. They're not getting any production offensively from their catcher position. And Andrew Kisner's their backup. Jonah Heim hasn't hit. Their DH, the guy that's gotten the most at-bats as a DH is Travis Janikowski, who's not a DH and isn't really a big leaguer. I guess they would want maybe a major league piece because they don't want to go through a rebuild. And they have so much pitching coming back that they could potentially sell and still be kind of buyers at the deadline with
I just always
DeGrom
assume
and them
in
coming
these
back.
situations, a team probably wants young pitching back. Like, that's just when you sell at the deadline, so often it's who's the young pitchers that are coming in return, especially when you're trading a veteran starter. Like, they could easily trade Nathan Eovaldi and Scherzer and Michael Lorenzen and Andrew Heaney. So you're right, T-Bone. They do have veteran starters coming back this year via the injured list. They could still add some more. They could still add more young pitching to be able to add to their depth. So like a Graceffo would be somebody that immediately comes to mind for me, as maybe they put him into their bullpen at the major league level right away, and then long term they hope that he becomes a starter. Something like that. I don't know if that's enough for them, but that would be the kind of thing that, theoretically speaking, makes sense to me. I'm believing this, by the way. He makes too much sense for the Cardinals. He's got all the pedigree. He's been there, done that in the postseason, has that kind of history. You want to talk about a guy that does play up as a number 2 in the postseason, by the way? I don't have to, kind of tilt my head, squint hard. That dude's a number 2 starter in the playoffs. I just trust Nathan Eovaldi to be that dude once you get there.
That's why Texas has him.
Yep.
And now you're going to have to trade
Did
him
it for
away.
Boston, did it for Texas. You could do it here in St. Louis. I absolutely believe that. So he would be the guy that I'd be targeting, number 1 on my list.
All right, guys,
I
believe
didn't
it.
even think about him as an option.
Believe
So,
it or not, the Blues make all 5 selections of their first 3 rounds tomorrow night, over the weekend.
All 5?
So they got 2 in the second, 2 in the third, 1 in the first.
I'm going to believe it. I think they're developing this war chest of prospects right now, and then they're going to utilize them via some guys making the roster and a lot of them being traded within the next 3 years. But for right now, I think they would like to add to their prospect pool.
I'll believe it as well. I think they'll make all the selections. I don't think they'll look to move out from them. I think hearing Army talking at pre-draft availability he had, still sounded like someone that still wanted to kind of gather prospects to, as what BK said.
Yeah, we saw, the only reason I bring this up is we saw the San Jose Sharks trade their first and second pick, first and second round picks, not the first overall pick, to Buffalo for the 11th overall pick. So it seems like some teams are gathering as many as possible. I actually wonder if maybe the Blues select more than 5 in the first 3 rounds.
Well, that ties into what my believe it or not was. Believe it or not, Pavel Buchnevich is traded on draft night.
I'm going to not believe that. I think he's going to get traded the first or second day of free agency.
I'm with you.
I think it's going to be...
Sorry, excuse me. I think he's getting re-signed.
Especially after hearing Craig Button, I don't. They're going to want 7 or 8 years, and the Blues aren't going past 5. And if you're staying at 5, well, now you're paying me more money than Thomas and Kyrou, and that's not going to happen. I truly believe it's going to be, okay, Booch, what is the price? Can't get there. Let's see what's out available to us. And that's where I think the Martin H. thing becomes interesting.
I think they end up getting to 6 years and it lowers the AAV. I'm guessing Booch probably wants 7. The Blues would like to offer 5. They end up settling on 6. And the way that they get there is by a little lower AAV.
You know, we talked about getting creative. To get creative would be this offseason, offer sheet Natchez, trade Buchnevich to get your left-handed defenseman. That's how you get creative and make your team better next year.
I believe he's going to be traded. I think
on draft night?
Yeah, and that's tomorrow, right? I think we're potentially even talking about a Buchnevich trade when we're doing the show tomorrow. That's how I think this is going to go down, because a
lot of the time they do happen day of, not night of.
And I don't...
It's tough to pull that off.
And Army's talked about where he doesn't like being rushed into a deal. So my guess is, as he's had those conversations, I don't think Army would settle on a 6-year deal. I think, and the way Tom Stillman talked when he joined the opening drive a couple weeks ago was, well, if it's on Army and our terms, well, that's not, well, we might be able to smudge it a bit. So I think they don't come to an agreement. I think he gets dealt, and they maybe acquire another first-round pick for tomorrow night.
What BK said, the scenario where they get to 6 because they want 5 and Booch wants 7, I think they want 4. And I think he wants 7 or 8. I mean, if you're him, I'm 30 years old when I'm a UFA. I have to get something that takes me beyond my 36-year-old season. Otherwise, I might be out of the league. So I'm with T-Bone. I don't know if it's going to happen on the draft night because that's just such a big trade. That seems like, though, once free agency really kicks in and they get an idea of what he wants, that's where you make your move.
T-Bone?
Oh, that was his.
Yeah.
314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service X line for Believe It or
Make him
Not.
sleep on the couch tonight.
That's it. I'm coming to your birthday party, and I'm eating the food and spitting it in the trash can.
Guys, believe it or not, this time next week, the Blues will have acquired a top 6 forward and or a defenseman.
Is it and or just or? Okay.
Take 2. This time next week, the Blues will have acquired a top 6 forward or added a defenseman.
I mean, I'm going to go... I can't be a hypocrite of what I just said. I think there's going to be some type of trade by the end of this offseason. And I think if you're them, you want to get it done sooner rather than later. And there's teams that have to move on from salary. Ottawa's got to move on from one of these defenseman contracts. Vegas has to move money out. I'm going to say believe it.
I think I'll believe it, too. I can see where they maybe bring in somebody to try and be in the top 6. I don't know if they can upgrade the defense this summer, but I can see where they try and bring in someone that's younger, fits their timeline, that can fit into their top 6 this year. Maybe it is a center, and then as time goes along and Dvorsky gets more ready, you bump that guy to wing.
I would love for this to be the case, guys. I just think that this is going to be an offseason where we end up being a little underwhelmed.
Like the trade deadline?
Last offseason?
And the reason why is because I think it's really hard to thread the needle that they're trying to find right now. And in order to do so, it would require the no trade clauses not existing.
Yeah, but see, what happened last offseason, you saw what the plan is. Like, people keep asking what Doug Armstrong's plan. You saw it. You got to move out one of these defensemen. They almost accomplished it, but the no trade clause. I get it, but there's more teams available that have cap space that Torrey Krug might be willing to go to if that's the person you're moving out. And if you're moving that out, you're bringing something else in.
All right, guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals will re-sign Paul Goldschmidt because he is a legacy player. I don't think he's coming back.
I think he's gone. I think
agree.
Them playing Burleson at first base when Goldie gets days off is telling you everything you need to know.
I would say not believe it. Now, I don't think he would do this. But if I went to Paul Goldschmidt and said, we'll bring you back on a 1-year deal, but you're a bench bat, then I would consider it. I don't think he would do it.
He's too proud to do that. And honestly, he shouldn't do that. He's good enough to be a starter somewhere.
Maybe. I would say...
There's a lot of bad first basemen out there.
He's one of them. That's the problem. And if I said to him, like, you can take Matt Carpenter's role from this year, then I would bring him back. But I don't
go to
see him
Houston.
doing that.
You should go to Houston next year.
But you want him to sign another old first baseman?
No, I'm just like a 1 year deal.
Yeah, I think Houston learned their lesson.
That feels very well. Their lesson was don't sign that guy to like a 4 year deal. A 1 year deal, being back in his home state. Houston makes a lot of sense for Paul Goldschmidt. And he'll be a smart one, or he'll be a smart signing for them, and I think he'll be good. By the way, I looked this up on that baseball trade value site. Again, take it or leave it. I'm not telling you it's gospel, but for Nathan Eovaldi, it would cost almost exactly Gordon Rosefo. That's the kind of return that you're probably looking for there. By the way, Michael Ciani has kind of worked his way into being a legitimate asset at the deadline.
Don't trade him.
What are you trading
I'm not telling you he's going to be dealt, but like if they needed a center
Bader.
fielder.
I expect Gersh to say that kind of stuff because I've seen him do it before.
You wanted Bader, man. You got him now, okay?
This site views Quinn Matthews and Cooper Jerpy as being too much. Tommy Edmonds right in line with what it would cost to get somebody
What
like
about Herrera?
It's too much. Way too much to give up in this kind of a trade. So it's not going to take a ton. It's going to take lower level prospects for you to be able to get somebody like a Nathan Eovaldi. We always talk about this, like the guys that have no term remaining, they just don't cost as much to be able to get at the deadline. That's why a lot of teams end up trading for them. All right, coming up next, Mizzou top 10 offense in college football, at least according to a video game. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Chair Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Yesterday, the Cardinals split their doubleheader with the Braves as they take 2 of 3 from Atlanta. And tonight, they start a 4-game set with the Cincinnati Reds. 6:45 will be first pitch as Miles Michaelis will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. If you're watching today over on YouTube, youtube.com/101 ESPN STL, you see I've got my Mizzou shirt on. And one of the reasons why is because EA Sports, it's in the game, coming out with their top 25 rankings for a bunch of different things. They yesterday came out with their most difficult stadiums to play in.
Mizzou was on there? Top 10.
Very disappointed to see that Ferrario Field was not a part of their rankings. I'll be talking to somebody about that. But today, they were a part of the top 10 offenses in college football heading into the 2024 season. Alex, the top 10 was as follows. Number 1, no real surprise here, Georgia. Number 2, Oregon. Number 3, Alabama. Number 4, Texas. So in other words, the teams that participated in the college football playoff. Number 5, Ohio State, who Mizzou held to, nothing last year. Number 6, LSU. I don't know if we know who their quarterback is going to be. That seems difficult. Number 7, Miami. Number 8, Colorado. What are we doing? Number 9, Mizzou. And number 10, Clemson. So top 10 offense heading into the 2024 season is Mizzou. Alex, I think the Mizzou's too low. I know it's awesome that they're getting their flowers. They deserve to be ranked really high. They have basically everybody coming back. They've got a couple of questions on the offensive line, but they did bring in one of the best offensive line transfers coming into the last offseason, a starter at Oklahoma, now going to be playing for Mizzou. Otherwise, man, everybody's back this year offensively for them. They got the quarterback, they got the receivers. Cody Schrader being gone is a big loss, but they got a couple of transfers there and a freshman that they think can potentially play there. I think Mizzou's going to finish this season as a top 7 offense in all of college football. And then putting Colorado at number 8 is just nonsense.
I mean, essentially they are. It's funny to me because you got 5 teams that all have 89 overalls, and it's like, okay, you got to have a little bit of distinguishing. What are we doing with this?
Ohio State to Mizzou, 5 to 9, all at the exact same rating offensively. And I would put Mizzou at the top of that list, not Ohio State.
Well, and here's the thing, and I'm with you.
Brady Cook.
If there's one dude on offense that I'm going to start chanting, it's not Brady Cook.
Yeah, it's Luther
Luther Burden. Come on, man. The one thing that I don't get is the love for Colorado on these EA Sports games. Like, Colorado was fine last year, but we were all hyped for it. And then once it was Colorado versus Colorado State or whatever, that's when it felt like it just completely dipped off. And then they started to become this like side conversation piece. But in terms of difficult stadium to play, in terms of offense, and then what were they ranked defensively?
Mizzou?
No, Colorado, 20th. Oh. Okay, so they weren't that high on that one. But like I'm more surprised by all of this Colorado hype this for EA Sports.
You shouldn't be, though.
It's the Deion Sanders effect. I get it, but it's like, what are we doing with this?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised Colorado was this high. Now, look, I get it because Shedeur is one of the top picks for, the guy that's going to be the first quarterback that's taken. And if you've got one of the best quarterbacks, you're automatically going to get pretty high up on a bunch of offensive lists. But, man, then you look outside the rest of the pieces, and maybe the most important part, the thing that they didn't have last year, an offensive line to protect him. And that's where I just draw the line. I'm like, okay, there's no way Colorado's there. And, again, Missouri's going to have some of those question marks, but they've got a quarterback that you've seen that has proven it, that plays well. You're going to have a running back
like
team.
17 receivers that have produced at the college level already.
I'm kind of with BK. I probably would have had them kind of in that top 7, top 6 range, and I'd hear the argument against them on Ohio State. Like, they should be potentially, if everything goes right and they figure out the offensive line and the running back room, you kind of sort that out, you should have a top 5 potential offense for the Missouri Tigers.
It's going to be so much fun to watch. I did not see the Illini on either of these lists.
It's weird. I didn't either, man.
I didn't see them top 25 offense or defense or most difficult places to play.
What about special teams?
Probably going to be up there.
We're so good we don't want to be in the game. That'd be a cheat code. Okay. We decided not to be in EA
That's smart with EA Sports. Be like, you know what, guys? I'm not going to give you the permission to use our identity on EA Sports.
I think we're being a little undersold here. What the hell?
SEC teams, by the way, top 25 offensively. Georgia, Bama, Texas, LSU, Mizzou, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. That's 8 of the top 23 teams in the SEC.
That's
I was
why
a little
Illinois didn't
surprised
get
to
there.
not see Ole Miss higher on this list. They're at 13. They could be really good offensively this year. So that the SEC, once again, no surprise to anybody, is going to be absolutely insane. If you go to the defensive side of the ball, Georgia is at number 2 defensively in this new college football 2025 game. Georgia, Alabama, Texas is also in the top 25. Oklahoma in the top 12. Auburn, LSU, Texas A&M, and Florida. It's 8 of the top 25 again on the offensive and defensive side of the ball in the SEC going into this season.
Unbelievable. SEC is going to be a whole lot of fun to watch this year.
Dude, every week is going to be like the
I'd say
best
a
of
playoff
the best
game, but a
against
lot
one
of teams
another.
get in now. No, if there was a 14 playoff, oh my God, the SEC would be awesome.
I haven't
No.
looked at Texas's schedule this year. That is going to be a rude awakening for them. To go
Because
from
they're doing SEC competition now?
yeah, going from the
The
Big
12, you had like on a typical year, maybe you have like 2, maybe 3, like legit. Like Oklahoma was always a legitimate matchup.
K-State was always a tough one.
Yeah, and there'd be some teams that would like surprise you. Like a couple years ago, Kansas was really good.
Last year, KU was
I
gonna
think
be
they
good
were
as
hurt
well.
when they played
Texas
them.
got Michigan, right? Is that this year?
They've got Michigan in week 2
Well,
on the road, by the way.
you better hope your first
Awakening.
game's a win.
They've got Oklahoma. They've got Georgia. They got it pretty easy, all things considered, this year. Because their other SEC slate is Mississippi State, Vandy, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Texas A&M.
Oh,
all
they've
things
really got it
considered,
easy.
they got a really nice schedule this year in the SEC.
Yeah, that was a welcome to the SEC gift.
Meanwhile, Oklahoma,
They didn't get the same treatment.
Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, Ole Miss, Mizzou, Alabama, LSU.
They did not get the
LSU,
same treatment.
Mizzou, and Ole Miss, and Auburn all on the road.
Oh,
Good luck.
Yeah, so you're going to have a bad year.
Congratulations. Welcome to the SEC.
Oklahoma drew
Here's
the short
5
straw.
wins.
That's what getting punched in the mouth feels like.
No lie. He's Alex, it's T-Bone. I'm BK. The Rewind is next. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, Cardinals win 2 out of 3 over the last couple of days against the Atlanta Braves. They win one yesterday with Matthew Liberatore on the mound, an outstanding outing by him. We'll be curious to see what Ollie Marmol has to say later on this evening. Alex and T-Bone both go into the game to cover it for 101 ESPN. Interested to hear what the plan is with Libby moving forward. Is he going to go right back to the bullpen? Are they going to consider going to a 6-man rotation? Does he replace Andre Palante in the rotation? I'm curious to see what their plan is there, but we'll certainly find out more about that later on this evening. Alex, meanwhile, if you missed it earlier, he took this conductor hat.
My head's itchy.
Put it on the top of his head.
It.
He is officially on board. He has jumped on the bandwagon. The Cardinals are back, according to Alex Ferrario, but not as a championship contender. He says, yeah, this is a team that can make the playoffs. So I don't know if he's all the way bought in. Alex, where are you at with the Cardinals right now as we are basically halfway through the season?
I'm not denying that this team is going to be a playoff team anymore. I denied that for all the way up until I put that conductor hat on, because I saw the outcome of the Astros series, the Rockies series, and the Marlins series, and I'm like, what are we doing here? We're acting as if this team is really a playoff threat. And although I still don't believe they're a team that could even get to the DS, I can believe on this team now because of what they did just recently against the Braves and what they have done against every team behind them in the National League. The other teams in the National League right now that aren't the Brewers, Dodgers, and Phillies, and maybe the Braves, although I'm not believing them very much because of the injuries that they've had, they're all the team that I thought the Cardinals were that was just going to be gifted a playoff spot because the National League is trash. I can't say that about the Cardinals anymore because they've got pitching, and this is pitching that I did not expect to be this good. Your bullpen is very lethal, and now you've got weapons offensively that I did not believe you had. You've got guys who could come up with some clutch hits, mostly Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson. So, again, I don't think you could do much damage in the playoffs, and I still don't believe that, but I am no longer in doubt that this team is a playoff team. I truly believe they will be the first or second wild card team by the end of the season.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I am is I believe they are a playoff team. Now, they do need upgrades, and some of them they might be able to fix. Like getting a number 2 starter, they can probably address it at the trade deadline. It's not going to be the typical number 2 starter that you typically think of. It's going to be like an Eric Fetty type. Yeah, exactly. Kikuchi could be one of them.
On the radio, man.
The other one for me is like the offense. We talked about it. Like, can you win without Goldie and Arenado being Goldie and Arenado? They're winning without him, and they're playing like a pack mentality, almost what the Blues want to do. I just don't know if that is still a sustainable model to get through the regular season and to win in October. That's what I'm going to be fascinated to know, because I do think they are missing a cleanup hitter, and I don't know if they have it on the roster. Maybe Newbar can be that guy, but that's not something that they're going to go out and probably get at the trade deadline.
Throw a party for Nate Eovaldi.
Dude, you suck at this.
Oh, you want to talk?
Yeah, Schwarzenko trended through St. Louis in 2019.
Cardinals back in action tonight against the Cincinnati Reds. Michaelis against Andrew Abbott, who the Cardinals had a pretty good game against earlier this season, but he has been really impressive so far. Lefty on the mound. I will bet this is probably a game for Dylan Carlson. Would like to see a nice game in this one for Paul Goldschmidt, who's heating up over his last 9 against the lefty. This is typically in the past where you would see him have some success. See if that's going to be the case for the Cardinals tonight.
One thing I'll be curious, will they move Arenado back up? Because they've been doing that against lefties, even though his numbers are terrible against left-handed pitching.
If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Coming up later tonight, you can hang out with Jamie Rivers, 101 ESPN, and Stella Artois this Thursday night from 6 to 8 o'clock. That is later on this evening at Cyberg's in Maryland Heights. You can get the information for that at 101ESPN.com. Free Stella samples and your chance at attendance prizes. We'll talk to you guys on Monday together. The guys have you tomorrow. I am off, so enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you later here on 101 ESPN.